It was 11:47 p.m. when the bus exploded. Dr. Marcus Sterling had just finished his third espresso of the shift, admiring his reflection in the trauma bay window when the entire hospital shook. The fluorescent lights flickered, coffee sloshed onto his Italian loafers. What the hell was that? Through the ambulance bay doors, they could see the orange glow against Chicago's skyline. Within 90 seconds, the scanner crackled to life. Mass casualty incident. City bus versus semi-truck. Explosion. Multiple victims. ETA 4 minutes. Sterling's face went pale. 4 minutes. He'd never handled more than 2 trauma patients at once. His hands started to shake. That's when she appeared. Dr. Sarah Chen, 52 years old. Gray hair pulled back in a messy bun. Cheap scrubs that hung loose on her thin frame. Hands that trembled when she held her coffee cup. Knees that creaked when she walked. The other doctors called her Grandma. The nurses whispered that she'd gotten her medical degree from some no-name school overseas. Sterling had a running bet with the other attendings that she'd quit within a month. She'd been there 6 weeks. Dr. Sterling, Sarah said quietly, her voice barely audible over the chaos erupting around them. We need to activate the mass casualty protocol. Now. He laughed. Actually laughed. Listen, Grandma Chen, why don't you stick to doing charts? The real doctors will handle this. Sarah's jaw tightened. Her trembling hands clenched into fists. But she said nothing. She just turned and walked toward the trauma bays, her uneven gait making her look older than her years. What none of them knew, what none of them could possibly have known, was that those trembling hands had once performed a triple amputation under enemy fire in Fallujah. That uneven gait, shrapnel from a mortar round that had killed 3 men standing next to her, and that cheap overseas medical degree, it was from Johns Hopkins, before she'd joined the 75th Ranger Regiment as a combat surgeon. But Sarah Chen kept secrets. She'd been keeping them for 15 years. At 11:51 p.m., the first ambulance arrived. Then another, then 5 more, 7 victims, all critical, 2 minutes to live without immediate intervention. Sterling froze. Sarah didn't. What happened in the next 2 hours would make the FBI reopen files they'd classified unsolved for over a decade. What they would discover would shake the Department of Defense to its core. But first, 7 people needed to not die. And the rookie everyone mocked was about to show them why, in certain circles, she'd once been known by another name entirely. They called her the Ghost. Sarah Chen's alarm didn't need to ring. She'd been awake for hours, staring at the water-stained ceiling of her studio apartment in Pilsen. The radiator clanked and hissed. Outside, someone's car alarm wailed in the pre-dawn darkness. Her hands were shaking again. She held them, up in the dim light filtering through the blinds, watching the tremor. Not Parkinson's, not nerve damage, though the doctors who didn't know her history always guessed that. No, this was something else. Something that started in Kandahar in 2004 and never really stopped. Sarah pushed herself out of bed, her right knee clicking audibly. The VA had offered surgery. She'd declined. The limp was a reminder of what she'd survived, of what she'd lost, of why she'd disappeared. She dressed in the dark. Cheap Target scrubs in surgical blue, comfortable sneakers with worn soles, a fleece jacket against Chicago's October chill. No jewelry, no makeup, no attempt to cover the gray in her hair or the lines around her eyes. At 52, Sarah had earned every one of those lines. She just wished she could forget how she'd gotten them. The Chicago Transit Authority bus arrived at 4:37 a.m., exactly on schedule. Sarah sat in her usual spot, back row, window seat, where she could see everyone who got on. Old habits. The kind that kept you alive in Helmand Province. The kind that made you look paranoid in civilian life. The man across from her was sleeping, his head against the grimy window. The woman near the front clutched a hospital ID badge, probably heading to the same place Sarah was. Northwestern Memorial, Level 1 Trauma Center, one of the best in the country. And Sarah Chen was the lowest person on the totem pole. Coffee, Grandma? Sarah looked up from the patient chart she'd been reviewing. Dr. Marcus Sterling stood in the doorway of the resident lounge, holding a Starbucks cup with his name written on it, in perfect cursive. Behind him, 3 other residents snickered. No, thank you, Dr. Sterling, Sarah said evenly. Oh, right. You probably need something stronger at your age. What is it? Ensure? Metamucil? More laughter. Sarah had learned not to react. In her 6 weeks at Northwestern, she'd been called Grandma, old-timer, past her. Prime should be retired, and Sterling's personal favorite, the diversity hire who can't cut it. None of them knew she'd been recruited directly by the chairman of surgery. None of them knew why. Dr. Chen, a nurse poked her head in, you're needed in the ER. Minor suturing, Bay 3. Minor suturing? Of course. While Sterling got the interesting cases, The appendectomies, the exploratory laparotomies. Sarah got drunk college kids who'd punched through windows and elderly patients with skin. Tears. She'd once reattached a soldier's arm using fishing line and a Leatherman tool, but she sutured the college kid's hand without comment. Her trembling fingers somehow rock steady once they held the needle driver. Muscle memory. The body remembering what the mind tried to forget. Dr. Chen, can you tell me the differential diagnosis for acute abdominal pain? Dr. Richard Morrison, the attending physician, stood at the head of the patient's bed, arms crossed. 50 people crammed. Into the room. Medical students, residents, nurses, all eyes on Sarah. This was a game. Morrison played it every morning. Pick the weakest link, humiliate them publicly, build character, he called it. Sarah called it bullying. Appendicitis, cholecystitis, pancreatitis, bowel obstruction, perforated ulcer, kidney stones, ovarian torsion in females, ectopic pregnancy, mesenteric ischemia. Yes, thank you, Dr. Chen. You can read. But can you actually manage a patient? Silence. Someone coughed. I managed over 400 trauma patients in combat conditions, Dr. Morrison. The words were out before she could stop them. Morrison's eyebrows shot up. Excuse me? Sarah felt her face flush. Stupid. She'd sworn she wouldn't mention it. Wouldn't give them ammunition. Nothing, Dr. Morrison. I apologize. He smiled. Not a kind smile. 400 trauma patients in combat. Is that what they told you to say in your interview? How to play? The veteran card to get past our standards? Dr. Morrison, because I've worked with real military surgeons, real trauma surgeons, and they don't show up here barely able to hold a coffee cup steady. Sarah's hands clenched at her sides. The tremor was worse now, always worse under stress. Sterling leaned over to another resident, loud enough for everyone to hear. I give her 2 more weeks, max, then she'll realize she's in over her head. Sarah sat alone, as always. Her lunch was homemade, leftover rice and vegetables that she'd stretched across 3 meals. She watched the other residents laugh and joke at a nearby table. Sterling was holding court, telling some story that involved a lot of hand gestures and making everyone laugh. She didn't begrudge them their youth, their confidence, their clean records. She just wished she could explain that confidence was a luxury, that cocky surgeons got people killed, that in Ramadi in 2006, when an IED had taken out half her medical team, it wasn't the loudest or the most arrogant who'd survived. It was the quiet ones, the ones who'd seen enough to know that every patient might be your last. Her pager buzzed. ER. Minor laceration. Bay 7. Sarah dumped her half-eaten lunch in the trash and headed downstairs. She overheard them before she saw them. Literally shaking, like visibly shaking. How did she even get through medical school? I heard Morrison talking to administration. Apparently she's some kind of diversity hire. Veteran quota or something? Well, it's dangerous. Patient safety issue, if you ask me. Sarah stood frozen outside the women's locker room. She should leave, should walk away, but her feet wouldn't move. Sterling thinks she'll quit before the month is out. He's got money on it. How much? 500, says she doesn't make it to Thanksgiving. Laughter. The sound of lockers slamming. Sarah turned and walked back down the hallway, her uneven gait echoing off the tiles. Her hands weren't shaking anymore. They were perfectly still. Because she'd made a decision, she wasn't going to quit. She wasn't going to let them win. She'd survived things that would have broken Sterling and Morrison and every single one of those laughing residents. She'd survive this too, even if it killed her. What Sarah didn't know, what she couldn't possibly know, was that in 9 hours and 32 minutes, a bus would explode. 7 people would be dying. And every single person who'd mocked her, doubted her, bet against her, would be proven catastrophically wrong. But first, she had 6 more hours of minor suturing to get through. She pulled her shoulders back, ignored the ache in her knee, and headed to Bay 7. Dr. Marcus Sterling adjusted his designer scrubs, the kind you had to special order, the kind that actually fit properly instead of hanging like shapeless sacks, and smiled at the medical students gathered around the high-fidelity surgical mannequin. The key to trauma surgery, he said, his voice carrying that effortless confidence that came from never having failed at anything in his entire 33 years, is speed and decisiveness. Hesitation kills patience. He made the first incision with a flourish, narrating each step like he was hosting a cooking show. The medical students watched, rapt. 3 of them were taking notes on iPads. 1 was recording on her phone. Sterling had specifically told them to record him. Good material for social media, building his brand. Dr. Sterling? A 4th-year medical student raised her hand. What about Dr. Chen? She's been doing trauma surgery for... Dr. Chen, Sterling interrupted smoothly, is a cautionary tale. See, in medicine, you need to keep your skills sharp. Take too much time off, get too old, and he made a gesture like sand slipping through fingers. You lose it. The hands shake. The mind slows. The confidence evaporates. But didn't she serve in... Listen, Sterling leaned in conspiratorially. Between you and me, military medicine is not the same as real medicine. They're basically field medics with delusions of grandeur. Slap on some gauze, give them morphine, ship them out. That's not surgery. That's triage. The students nodded, writing this down. Sterling didn't mention that he'd never performed surgery under anything more stressful than bright lights and classic rock playing in the... Or didn't mention that his father was on Northwestern's board. Didn't mention that his medical school loans had been paid off before he'd even graduated, courtesy of the Sterling Family Foundation. Why would he? He'd earned his position. Natural talent, hard work. The fact that he'd never had to worry about rent or student loans or whether he could afford to eat that week, that was just smart planning. Dr. Sterling? Dr. Morrison stuck his head into the simulation lab. Got a minute? Sterling excused himself, following Morrison into the hallway. Morrison was old school, 62, graying at the temples, 25 years at Northwestern. He'd been Sterling's mentor since day one, taking him under his wing almost immediately. Birds of a feather, Morrison liked to say. Listen, Mark, Morrison said quietly, about Chen. What about her? I think we need to have a serious conversation with HR. Patient safety issue. Those hands of hers, did you see them this morning? Shaking like a leaf. Sterling nodded gravely, hiding his satisfaction. I've been documenting everything, every tremor, every hesitation, building a case. Good man. Morrison clapped him on the shoulder. Between you and me, I don't know what the chairman was thinking, bringing her on. Diversity quota bullshit. But we'll fix it. Quietly, professionally. Get her out before she hurts someone. How long do you think we need? Another week. 2 at most. Then we'll have enough to recommend termination. Morrison walked away, and Sterling allowed himself a small smile. This was going to be easier than he'd thought. 500 says she's gone by Thanksgiving. Sterling slid a crisp stack of bills across the table. 3 other attendings were sitting in the leather chairs, craft beers in hand, watching Monday Night Football on the flat screen. I'll take that bet, Dr. James Rodriguez said. But I say she doesn't make it to Halloween. That's this Friday. 2 weeks. Gentleman's wager? Sterling held out his hand. They shook on it. What's her deal anyway? Dr. Amy Winters asked. Why'd the chairman hire her? Sterling shrugged. Some sob story about being a veteran. You know how it is. Hospital wants good PR. We support our troops. He made air quotes. Never mind that she's a liability. Did she actually serve? Rodriguez asked. Who cares? Military medicine is a joke. Band-aids and morphine, not real surgery. They all laughed. What Sterling didn't know, what none of them knew, was that Dr. Sarah Chen had been awarded the Bronze Star with Valor, that she'd performed a field amputation on a wounded Marine while under direct enemy fire, saving his life when a medevac helicopter couldn't reach their position, that she'd worked 72 hours straight during the Battle of Fallujah, keeping 27 critically wounded soldiers alive until they could be evacuated. What Sterling didn't know was that there was a memorial plaque at Walter Reed Medical Center with Sarah's name on it, honoring her as one of the finest combat surgeons in modern military history. What Sterling didn't know would, in approximately 5 hours, become everyone's problem. Sterling clicked his key fob. His Tesla Model S chirped, lights flashing in the dim parking garage. He'd parked in his usual spot, one of the designated attending physician spaces near the elevator. Prime real estate. Sarah Chen's spot was 3, levels up, in the farthest corner next to the stairwell where the lights were always flickering and there was a permanent smell of urine. Equity, Sterling thought with a smirk. His phone buzzed. A text from his girlfriend, Ashley. Dinner at Gibson's? Gibson's, $200 steaks. He typed back, sure, my treat. Pick you up at 8:30. His treat, his father's credit card, technically, but what was the difference? The Sterling family had money, old money, the kind that came from great-grandfathers who'd made smart investments in railroads and steel. Marcus Sterling had never worried about money a day in his life, unlike Chen, who drove a 2003 Honda Civic with a cracked windshield and bumper held on with duct tape. He'd seen her in the parking garage once, struggling to get the car started, turning the key again and again while the engine clicked impotently. She'd looked embarrassed when she'd noticed him watching. He'd driven past without offering help. Not his problem. Sterling slid into his Tesla, and the heated seats warmed immediately. The sound system kicked on, his carefully curated playlist of alt-rock and indie favorites. He had good taste. Everyone said so. He pulled out of the garage, already thinking about his medium-rare ribeye and Ashley's latest Instagram drama. He wasn't scheduled back at the hospital until 8 a.m. tomorrow. He had no idea that in 3 hours and 47 minutes his phone would ring, that he'd be called back to the hospital for a mass casualty event, that his entire worldview would implode in the space of 2 hours. For now, Marcus Sterling had dinner reservations. Sarah sat at her small kitchen table, eating microwaved soup and reviewing tomorrow's surgery schedule on her laptop. Gallbladder removal. She was scheduled to assist. Sterling was the primary surgeon. She'd assisted on 17 gallbladder removals in the past 6 weeks. She'd performed hundreds of far more complex surgeries in her military career, but here she was lucky to hold a retractor. Her phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. "This is Dr. James Rodriguez. Are you available to cover tonight?" Attending called out sick. Sarah's heart leaped, covering. Actually being the attending on call, making real decisions. She typed back immediately, "Yes, I can be there in 30 minutes. Make it 20. We're slammed." Sarah grabbed her keys, ignored the pain in her knee as she took the stairs too. At a time, the elevator was broken again, and climbed into her ancient Honda. The engine coughed twice before turning over. "Please," she thought, "just get me there." The car started. Sarah pulled into traffic, heading back to Northwestern. She had no way of knowing that slammed was about to become an understatement, that in less than 3 hours, a CTA bus carrying 16 passengers would collide with a semi-truck hauling industrial chemicals, that the resulting explosion would send 7 people to her emergency room with injuries that would make Fallujah look tame. For now, she just needed to get to the hospital. At 9:47 p.m., Sarah Chen clocked back in. At 11:47 p.m., everything changed. The sound hit first. A thunderous boom that rattled the windows in the trauma bay, shook the fluorescent lights, sent instruments clattering off the metal trays. Dr. Marcus Sterling, who had been called back to the hospital 45 minutes ago because someone had screwed up the schedule and there was no attending on duty, dropped his espresso cup. Hot liquid splashed across his Italian loafers. What the hell? Then the lights flickered. Emergency protocols kicked in. Somewhere, a generator hummed to life. The scanner crackled. All units. Mass casualty incident. CTA bus versus semi-truck at Roosevelt and Canal. Explosion reported. Chemical fire. Multiple victims. Multiple code reds. ETA 4 minutes. The emergency department erupted into controlled chaos. Nurses appeared from nowhere. Trauma bays that had been empty suddenly filled with equipment. Intubation kits, central line trays, rapid transfusers, crash carts. The resuscitation coordinator started barking orders. "I need 2 bays prepped for critical. Get the OR team on standby. Call in extra blood. Type O-neg. All units available." Sterling felt his mouth go dry. His hands started shaking. He'd trained for this, theoretically, in simulations, with mannequins that didn't bleed or scream or die. He'd never actually handled a mass casualty event. "Dr. Sterling?" A nurse was staring at him. "Dr. Sterling, we need you to activate the MCI protocol." Yes, do it. Activate it." "You need to activate it, sir. You're the attending." Right, he was the attending. He was in charge. He pulled out his phone with trembling fingers, opened the hospital app, fumbled through the menus. There, mass casualty protocol. Activate. He pressed the button. Immediately, every phone in the hospital buzzed. Overhead, the PA system came to life. "Mass casualty protocol activated. All available surgical staff report to the emergency department. All available surgical staff report to the emergency department." Through the ambulance bay doors, they could see the orange glow of fire against the Chicago skyline. Sirens wailed, growing closer. A helicopter roared overhead. News or police, Sterling couldn't tell. "How many victims?" he shouted over. The chaos. "Dispatch says 16 on the bus. Unknown additional from the truck and surrounding vehicles." 16. Jesus Christ. 16. "Dr. Sterling, we need to set up triage." "Yes, do that. Set up triage." "Where, sir?" "Where?" "I don't. Outside? In the hallway? Wherever there's room." The nurse gave him a look, not quite insubordination, but close, and ran off to organize things herself. Sterling stood in the center of the trauma bay, paralyzed. His medical training was evaporating. Everything he'd learned about disaster management, about triage, about mass casualties, it was somewhere in his brain, but he couldn't access it. Couldn't make his mind work. That's when he saw her. Dr. Sarah Chen stood near the ambulance bay entrance, perfectly still while everyone else was running. Her gray hair was still in that messy bun. Her cheap scrubs still hung loosely, but her hands, those trembling hands that everyone mocked, weren't shaking anymore. They were rock steady. Dr. Chen, Sterling said, relief flooding through him. Thank God. I need you to... Activate the red phone, Sarah said quietly. Her voice was different. Calm. Flat. Almost mechanical. We need the trauma surgeons from across town. This is going to be catastrophic. I already activated the red phone, Dr. Sterling. The direct line to Cook County and University of Chicago. We need their trauma teams. Now. How did she know about the red phone? That was for disasters. Do it now, Sarah said. Not a request. An order. Sterling found himself obeying, grabbing the red phone mounted on the wall near the charge nurse's station. It was labeled emergency use only. He'd never actually used it before. He picked up the receiver. It connected automatically. This is Northwestern Memorial. Mass casualty incident. We need assistance. The first ambulance screamed into the bay, lights strobing red and blue against the concrete. The back doors flew open. Female, approximately 32, GCS 3, massive trauma to chest and abdomen, BP 70/40, heart rate 140, intubated in the field. The paramedics wheeled the gurney in at a run. The woman's chest was a mess of blood and torn tissue. Her abdomen was distended. She wasn't breathing on her own. The ambubag was doing it for her. Trauma 1! Sarah shouted. She was already moving, running alongside the gurney. Her limp was gone. Her hands were steady. She looked 20 years younger. Sterling stood frozen as they wheeled past him. Dr. Sterling! Sarah's voice cut through his paralysis. I need you in Trauma 2. Second ambulance is 30 seconds out. Are you ready? Was he ready? No, he wasn't ready. But he nodded anyway. The second ambulance arrived. Male, mid-40s, burns covering 60% of his body, screaming, writhing on the gurney. Trauma 2, move! Sarah shouted. Sterling ran to Trauma 2. The nurses were already cutting away the man's clothes, starting IVs, hooking up monitors. The smell hit him, burned flesh, chemicals, smoke. His stomach lurched. Dr. Sterling, he needs a central line. Now. Right, central line. He'd done these before, hundreds of times, in simulations, in calm, controlled settings. Not with a man screaming and thrashing and... I need someone to sedate him first, Sterling said. No time. Do it now. But the patient was moving too much. Sterling couldn't get the ultrasound probe steady. Couldn't visualize the vein. His hands were shaking worse than Chen's ever had. I need him sedated. Sarah Chen wasn't thinking about Sterling. Wasn't thinking about the bets or the mockery or any of it. She was inside the moment. Inside the surgery. Inside the zone she'd lived in for 8 years of combat medicine. The woman on her table was dying, had maybe 2 minutes left. Her chest was filling with blood from a ruptured spleen. Her lung had collapsed from the force of the explosion. She needed a thoracotomy. Now. Betadine, Sarah said. Her voice was calm, mechanical, the voice of someone who'd done this 1,000 times. A nurse swabbed the woman's left chest with disinfectant. Scalpel. The knife appeared in Sarah's hand. She didn't hesitate, made a long incision along the 5th intercostal space. Blood welled up. Sarah didn't flinch. Deepened the incision, cutting through muscle and fascia. Rib spreaders. The nurse handed her the spreaders. Sarah inserted them, cranked them open. The ribs cracked audibly. Someone behind her gasped. Sarah reached inside the woman's chest cavity with her hand, felt for the heart. It was still beating, but weakly, fluttering. The pericardium was full of blood. Cross-clamp the aorta, she said. I need to slow the bleeding. She found the descending aorta by feel, years of practice, years of doing this in the dark and tents with flashlights, and applied the clamp. The blood loss slowed. Type O neg, 4 units. Start transfusing. Get me a vascular tray and call the OR. I need to move her upstairs in 3 minutes. The woman's vitals stabilized. Barely, but stable. 1 down. 6 to go. The 3rd ambulance arrived, then the 4th. Then 3 more in rapid succession. The ED was beyond capacity. Victims were being triaged in the hallway. The minor injuries, the walking wounded with cuts and bruises, were being diverted to an overflow area in the cafeteria. The critical patients were taking up every trauma bay. 7 patients. 7 patients who were actively dying, and 1 surgical resident who had frozen completely. Sterling stood in Trauma 2, staring at the burned man, unable to move. A nurse had sedated the patient. The central line tray sat open on the table. All Sterling had to do was insert the line. Simple procedure. He'd done it 100 times, but his hands wouldn't stop shaking. Dr. Sterling? The nurse's voice was urgent. His pressure is dropping. We need that line. I can't do it. My hands. Dr. Sterling. Sarah appeared in the doorway. Took one look at Sterling, at the patient, at the unused central line kit. Dr. Sterling, go coordinate with the OR. Make sure they're ready for multiple surgeries. But the patient must... I'll handle it. Go. Sterling fled. Actually ran out of the trauma bay. Sarah didn't watch him go. She was already at the patient's bedside, hands moving with practiced efficiency. Ultrasound probe on the neck. Visualize the internal jugular vein. Lidocaine. Needle. Thread the wire. Dilate. Insert the catheter. Suture. Done. 90 seconds. She didn't celebrate. Didn't pause. Just moved to the next bay. By 12:05 a.m., Sarah had stabilized 3 patients. Had sent 2 to the OR. Had saved 3 lives in the time it took most people to make coffee. But there were 4 more. 4 critical patients who needed immediate surgical intervention. And she was one person. In Trauma Bay 4, a teenage boy with a penetrating abdominal wound. In 5, an elderly woman with a massive head injury. In 6, a construction worker with a crushed pelvis. In 7, a young mother with bilateral pneumothoraces. Both lungs collapsed, filling with air, crushing her heart. Sarah stood in the hallway between the bays, her mind racing. Triage. She had to triage. Had to decide who got treated first, who lived, who died. In Fallujah, she'd made these decisions with morphine and prayer. Here, she had an entire hospital's resources. But still, only 2 hands. The boy in 4 is stable for now, a nurse said, appearing at her elbow, but he needs surgery within the hour. The woman in 5 is coding. Trauma in 6 says pressure is tanking. The pneumothorax in 7, too many voices, too many patients, too many ways to fail. Sarah closed her eyes, took one breath, opened them. Bay 7 first, pneumothorax, 2 minutes, then Bay 6, then 4. Get Bay 5 to CT. If she's got a survivable head injury, we'll operate. If not, she didn't finish, didn't have to. She walked into Bay 7. The young mother was dying. Her oxygen saturation was 82%. Normal was 95% or higher. At 80%, brain damage started. At 75%, cardiac arrest. Sarah didn't have time for an OR. Didn't have time for ultrasound guidance or proper sterile technique. She had 90 seconds. I need a 14-gauge angiocath, 2 of them, and a syringe. The nurse handed her the supplies. Sarah felt for the second intercostal space on the right side of the woman's chest. Found it. Didn't hesitate. Plunged the needle through skin, through muscle, through the pleural membrane. Hiss. Air rushed out under pressure. The trapped air that had been crushing the woman's lung, crushing her heart. Immediately, the oxygen saturation started climbing. 85%, 88%, 91%. Other side, Sarah said. She repeated the procedure on the left. Another hiss, more air escaping. 95%. The woman was breathing. Chest tubes, both sides. And get her to the OR. 1 down. 3 to go. Dr. Richard Morrison stood in the doorway of the ED, watching. He'd been called in 20 minutes ago. As one of the senior attendings, he was supposed to be helping coordinate. Instead, he was watching something he'd never seen before. Sarah Chen was performing trauma surgery in the middle of the emergency department. No OR. No ideal lighting. No perfect sterile conditions. Just her, a dying patient, and whatever equipment she could grab. And she was doing it faster than anyone Morrison had ever seen. He watched her move from Bay 7 to Bay 6, watched her evaluate the patient with the crushed pelvis in 15 seconds flat, watched her bark orders to the surgical team about external fixation and blood products and damage control procedures. Who taught her that? Morrison whispered to himself. The nurse coordinator, who'd worked at Northwestern for 30 years, said quietly, I've only seen that kind of work once before. Walter Reed, after a roadside bombing in Afghanistan. The surgeon who operated... She stopped. Morrison looked at her. What? Nothing, sir. Just that surgeon had the same efficiency, the same fearlessness. Morrison looked back at Sarah, at the woman everyone had dismissed as past her prime, as a diversity hire, as a liability. She was saving lives at a pace that shouldn't be possible. The teenage boy was stable, stable-ish. His blood pressure was holding. His abdomen was distended, internal bleeding, but slow, not immediately life-threatening. He had maybe 90 minutes before he'd need surgery. Sarah made a decision. Get him typed and crossed, 4 units, and have the OR standing by. But he's last priority. Dr. Chen, he's a kid. He's got time. The woman in 5 doesn't. Sarah walked to Bay 5. The elderly woman with the head injury. The CT scan was up on the monitor. Sarah studied it, her heart sinking. Massive subdural hematoma, brain herniation, no pupillary response. Even with surgery, the woman had maybe a 10% chance, and surgery would take 3 hours. 3 hours Sarah didn't have. 3 hours during which other patients would die. Triage, the cruelest part of medicine. Comfort care, Sarah said quietly. Morphine, I'm sorry. The nurse nodded, eyes wet. I'll take care of her. Sarah forced herself to turn away, to not think about it, to move to the next patient, but that was the lie surgeons told themselves. You always thought about it. Every patient you couldn't save stayed with you forever. Sarah had a lot of ghosts. She was about to add a few more. Sarah was in the OR with a construction worker, the crushed pelvis, when the nurse found her. Dr. Chen, there's someone here to see you. I'm in the middle of surgery. It's the FBI. Sarah's hand stilled for just a moment, just long enough for the assisting resident to notice. FBI? Sarah said, her voice carefully neutral. Why? They won't say, but they're in the waiting room. They're asking for Dr. Sarah Chen, and they have badges. Sarah resumed the surgery, but her mind was racing. The FBI. Here. Now. After 15 years of successfully staying hidden. But this was it. The moment she'd been dreading. The moment she'd known would come eventually. But why now? Why tonight? Dr. Chen, the resident was staring at her. Are you okay? Fine, Sarah lied. Clamp that vessel. We need to control the bleeding before we can plate the pelvis. She worked for another 20 minutes. Got the patient stable. Sent him to the ICU. Then she walked to the waiting room, her hands starting to shake again. 2 men in dark suits stood near the entrance. Both had FBI badges clipped to their belts. Both had the look of federal agents. Serious, professional, unreadable. Dr. Sarah Chen? The taller one asked. Yes. I'm Special Agent Marcus Hill. This is Special. Agent Jennifer Ross, we need to speak with you, privately. Sarah felt her stomach drop. Am I under arrest? No, ma'am, but we have questions. About your background. About your service record. About why you're using an assumed identity. The world tilted. Assumed identity. They knew. After 15 years, they knew. Special Agent Marcus Hill closed the conference room door. Special Agent Jennifer Ross set a laptop on the table and opened it. Sarah sat across from them, her hands folded in her lap to hide the tremor. Dr. Chen, Hill began, or should we say Captain Sarah Chen, formerly of the United States Army Medical Corps, 75th Ranger Regiment. Sarah said nothing. Ross pulled up a file on the laptop. According to military records, Captain Sarah Chen was killed in action on March 17, 2010, in Kandahar Province, Afghanistan. Vehicle-borne IED, body recovered but burned beyond recognition. Closed casket funeral, full military honors. Except, Hill continued, Captain Sarah Chen wasn't in that vehicle, was she? Sarah's jaw tightened. I don't know what you're talking about. Dr. Chen, we've been investigating a series of suspicious activity reports related to a medical identity that appeared in the system 6 years ago. Sarah Chen, age 52, medical degree from Johns Hopkins, completed residency at University of Chicago. Except Johns Hopkins has no record of a Sarah Chen graduating in that year, and U of C has no record of that residency. Records get lost. Not from institutions like Hopkins, Ross said sharply. Not unless someone deliberately erased them. Hill leaned forward. Dr. Chen, we know you're using a false identity. We know you're hiding from something. The question is, what? And why? Sarah looked at them both. These federal agents who thought they had all the answers, who thought they could waltz into her life and expose her secrets, they had no idea what they were dealing with. I want a lawyer, Sarah said. You're not under arrest? Then this conversation is over. Sarah stood, turned toward the door. We found the grave, Ross said. Sarah stopped. In Arlington, Section 60, Captain Sarah Chen, Bronze Star with Valor, Purple Heart, died March 17, 2010. We took DNA samples from the remains. Sarah's blood went cold. Funny thing about DNA, Hill said. It doesn't lie. And the DNA in that grave, it's not yours. So here's my question. Whose body is buried under your name? And why did you fake your own death? Sarah stood with her back to them, staring at the conference room wall. Her reflection in the darkened window looked old. Tired. Done. She'd run for 15 years, changed her name, erased her past, built a new life from nothing. And now it was over. Her name was Lieutenant Rachel Morrison, Sarah said quietly. She was 26 years old, infantry officer. Smart, brave, reminded me of my sister. She turned to face the agents. March 17th, 2010. We were on patrol outside Kandahar. Rachel's convoy. She requested medical support because one of her soldiers had been sick, probably just heat exhaustion, but she wanted to be safe. I volunteered. Sarah sat back down. Her hands were shaking badly now. We were 2 clicks from the fob when the IED detonated. VBI'd, vehicle-borne. The entire convoy was destroyed. Rachel's Humvee took the brunt. I was in the second vehicle. We survived. Barely. Ross was taking notes. Hill just listened. Rachel was still alive when I got to her. Barely. 3rd-degree burns, over 90% of her body. Traumatic brain injury, crushed chest. She was asking for her mother. Sarah's voice cracked. I couldn't save her. I tried. God, I tried. But there was too much damage. She died in my arms. I'm sorry, Ross said quietly. But that doesn't explain... 3 days later, I was called to the battalion commander's office. Told there was a problem. Rachel's body had been misidentified. Her dog tags had been destroyed in the explosion. The body had been burned beyond visual identification. And in the chaos of the aftermath, someone had grabbed my medical bag with my dog tags and assumed the body was mine. By the time they realized the mistake, Rachel's body was already on a plane to Dover, already processed as Captain Sarah Chen, already scheduled for burial with full honors. Hill frowned. And no one caught the error? They caught it. The battalion, commander told me. Said they'd issue a correction. Exhume Rachel's body. Rebury her with her own name. Sarah looked directly at Hill. But then he told me something else. He told me that there were people looking for me. People who wanted me dead. People connected to a mission I'd been on 6 months earlier. A classified mission. Black Ops level. It was called Operation Silent Storm, Sarah continued. I can't give you details. Most of it's still classified. But the short version was embedded with a special operations unit conducting raids on high-value targets. Taliban leadership. We were successful. Too successful. We eliminated targets that certain people, powerful people, wanted left alive. People who were being used as intelligence assets. Double agents, playing both sides. Ross looked up from her notes. Who wanted you dead? I don't know names. I just know that 3 members of my medical team were killed in accidents over the next 6 months. One in a training exercise, one in a car accident, one from a drug overdose. Except she didn't use drugs. The battalion commander had friends in intelligence. They confirmed there was a contract, not official, not sanctioned, but real. Someone wanted everyone involved in Operation Silent Storm eliminated. So he offered me a choice. Let the Army correct the mistake and put my name back on record. Or disappear. Hill leaned back in his chair. You chose to disappear. I chose to live, Sarah corrected. Rachel was already buried under my name. Her family thought she was coming home as Lieutenant Morrison. If I came back to life, Rachel would be nobody, just another casualty. No honors, no ceremony. Her mother would have to go through the grief all over again. So I let myself stay dead. Let Rachel's family have closure, and I disappeared. That's a hell of a story, Hill said. But it doesn't explain how you're here, working under a false identity with credentials that shouldn't exist. I had help, Sarah said. People in the military who knew what was happening, who knew I was being targeted. They created the new identity, backdated the records, made Sarah Chen, civilian Sarah Chen, real enough to pass background checks. That's conspiracy to commit fraud, Ross said. That's survival. Dr. Chen, it's Dr. Chen now, not Captain. That person died in Afghanistan. I'm just a surgeon trying to do her job. Hill studied her. Why? Northwestern? Why come out of hiding after 15 years? Because I got tired of running, Sarah said. Because I miss medicine, real medicine, not patching up soldiers in a tent, not working in rural clinics under fake names. I wanted to practice trauma surgery in a real hospital. So you took the job here, used your false credentials, put yourself at risk of exposure. Yes, that was incredibly stupid. Yes, Sarah agreed, but I was tired of being afraid. Ross and Hill exchanged looks, some kind of silent communication. Dr. Chen, Hill said, we need to take you in for questioning, officially. Am I under arrest? Not yet, but you've admitted to using false identification. That's a federal crime. You need to come with us. Sarah stood. When? Now. I have patients. They'll have to find another surgeon. Sarah thought about the teenage boy in Bay 4, the construction worker in the ICU, the young mother with the pneumothoraces who would need follow-up surgery. She thought about 15 years of running, of hiding, of being afraid. Okay, she said. Let's go. They walked through the hospital in silence. Hill on her left, Ross on her right. Sarah in the middle, her hands cuffed in front of her. They'd insisted. Protocol. Every doctor, every nurse, every patient they passed stopped and stared. There goes Dr. Chen, in handcuffs, being arrested. There goes Grandma Chen. Guess the diversity hire finally got caught. There goes that old woman who couldn't hack it. Sarah kept her eyes forward. Didn't react. Didn't explain. Just walked. They passed the trauma bay. She could see Dr. Sterling inside, talking to Dr. Morrison. Both of them looked up as she passed. Sterling's face lit up with vindication, schadenfreude, pure satisfaction. Morrison just shook his head, disappointed but not surprised. They passed the surgical residence lounge. Someone whispered loudly enough for Sarah to hear, "Told you she was a fraud." They passed the cafeteria. The night shift workers, the janitors, the food service staff, the people who actually kept the hospital running, watched her go, some with pity, some with confusion. They reached the main entrance. The automatic doors slid open. Cold October air rushed in. A black SUV was parked outside. Typical FBI vehicle, tinted windows, government plates. Hill opened the back door. Sarah climbed inside. Through the window, she could see the hospital, Northwestern. Memorial, one of the best trauma centers in the country, where she'd been working for 6 weeks, where she'd been mocked, dismissed, belittled, and bet against, where tonight she'd saved 7 lives, but none of that mattered now. The door closed. The SUV pulled away from the curb. Sarah Chen, whoever she really was gone. Dr. Marcus Sterling stood in the trauma bay, watching the taillights disappear. "Well," he said to Dr. Morrison, "I guess that's that." "Fraud charges," Morrison said. "False credentials. Jesus, I knew something was off about her." "Do you think," Sterling hesitated, "do you think any of her work was legitimate? Like, should we be worried about malpractice issues?" Morrison considered. "We'll have to review every case she touched. But honestly, Mark, I don't think there's a problem. She didn't really do anything complicated. Minor suturing, mostly." Sterling nodded, already mentally calculating. He'd been right about her. He'd won the bet. And now, with her gone, there'd be an opening for another resident. Maybe someone from his father's foundation. "Well, what about the patients from tonight?" a nurse asked, approaching them. "The bus crash victims?" "Well, what about them?" "Dr. Chen was handling most of them. Should we call in someone else?" Sterling waved a hand dismissively. "They're stable now. They'll be fine. Just monitor them overnight." "But Dr. Chen said the boy in Bay 4 needs surgery within—" "I'll handle it," Sterling interrupted. "I'm a trauma surgeon, remember?" The nurse bit her lip, but nodded. Sterling looked at his watch. 2:07 a.m. He was exhausted. Tonight had been a disaster. The FBI showing up, Chen getting arrested, the chaos of the mass casualty. He wanted to go home. "I'll be in the on-call room if anyone needs me," he told Morrison. "Wake me if there's an emergency." He walked away, already thinking about his comfortable bed, his Tesla, his dinner reservations tomorrow night. He had no idea that in 6 hours everything would change, that the FBI would return. But not for Dr. Chen. For answers. Dr. Sterling was in the middle of his 3rd cup of coffee when the emergency department doors burst open. 6 men strode in. Not FBI agents this time. These men were different. They wore civilian clothes, but they moved like military, walked with that particular awareness that came from years of combat training. 3 of them had visible weapons, Glocks and shoulder, holsters, not even attempting to hide them. The lead man was tall, black, probably mid-50s, with close-cropped gray hair and a scar running along his left jaw. He wore a leather jacket and jeans, but the way he carried himself screamed authority. "Where's Dr. Sarah Chen?" he demanded. Sterling looked up from his coffee. "Who's asking?" The man pulled out a badge. Not FBI. Different agency. Department of Defense. Defense Intelligence Agency. "Major General James Wilson, U.S. Army." "Retired," the man said. "Where is Captain Chen?" Sterling's hand trembled, sloshing coffee onto his scrubs. "Captain? She's not a captain. She's a resident. And she was arrested last night by the FBI for fraud." Wilson's face went completely still. "Say that again." "The FBI arrested her about 2 a.m. for using false credentials." "What FBI agents?" "I don't know. 2 of them, a man and a woman." Wilson turned to one of the men behind him. "Get DIA on the phone. Now, I want to know what FBI field office sent agents here last night. And I want the video footage from this hospital's security cameras." The man pulled out a phone and walked away, already talking. Wilson turned back to Sterling. "Show me where this happened." The hospital's security footage told the story. Special Agents Hill and Ross arriving at 12:30 a.m. The conference room conversation. Sarah being led out in handcuffs. The black SUV pulling away. Wilson watched in silence, his jaw clenched. "Pull the license plate," he ordered. One of his men zoomed in on the SUV, enhanced the image, ran the plate through a database. The vehicle is registered to the FBI Chicago field office, the man reported. Agents Hill and Ross are confirmed FBI. But, Wilson said, because there was clearly a but coming. But their assignment logs show them working a financial crimes case in Milwaukee last night. They weren't supposed to be in Chicago. Wilson's face darkened. Someone's lying. He turned to Sterling, who was standing in the doorway, trying to look like he belonged there. You, doctor, tell me everything that happened last night. Sterling explained the bus crash, the explosion, the mass casualty protocol. He made sure to emphasize his own role, how he'd activated the protocol, coordinated with the OR, managed the situation. He left out the part about freezing, about being unable to place a central line, about running away while Sarah did all the work. Wilson listened, without interrupting. When Sterling finished, Wilson said, "How many victims?" 7 critical patients. How many survived? All of them. Well, 6. 1 patient, an elderly woman with a head injury. We couldn't save, but the rest are stable. Who saved them? Sterling hesitated. Our trauma team. We worked together. Who saved them? Sterling swallowed. Dr. Chen did most of the work. She was very skilled at trauma procedures. Describe what she did. So Sterling described it. The emergency thoracotomy, the bilateral chest decompression, the damage control surgery on the crushed pelvis, the rapid decision-making, the fearlessness. As he talked, Wilson's expression changed. His jaw unclenched. His eyes widened slightly. She performed an emergency thoracotomy in the ED? Wilson asked. Yes. With no backup, no second surgeon. She didn't need backup. She was incredibly fast. Wilson looked at one of his men. That's her. That's the ghost. Wilson turned to Sterling. Do you know who Sarah Chen really is? A fraud, apparently. The FBI said, The FBI, Wilson interrupted, is either incompetent or complicit. Sarah Chen is not a fraud. She's one of the finest combat surgeons the United States military has ever produced. He pulled out his phone, showed Sterling a photograph, a younger Sarah Chen, maybe 35, in army fatigues, standing in front of a medical tent, dust and sand everywhere. But her eyes were the same, sharp, competent, fearless. Captain Sarah Chen, Wilson said, trauma surgeon, 75th Ranger Regiment, served 8 years in combat zones, Afghanistan, Iraq, Yemen, places we can't even acknowledge she was in. He swiped to another photo. Sarah in dress uniform, medals covering her chest. Bronze Star with Valor, Silver Star, 2 Purple Hearts, Combat Medical Badge. The list goes on. She saved over 400 lives during her service. 400, some of them in conditions you can't even imagine. Sterling stared at the photos. But the FBI said she was using false credentials, that she faked her identity. She did, Wilson said, for a good reason, because people wanted her dead. Wilson explained Operation Silent Storm, the classified mission, the Taliban targets, the people in power who'd been protecting those targets, the contract killing that had eliminated most of Sarah's team. She wasn't faking her identity to commit fraud, Wilson said. She was hiding to stay alive. And when I found out she'd come out of hiding, started working at a civilian hospital, I came here to warn her, to tell her she was putting herself at risk. But I was too late. Sterling felt something cold in his stomach. The FBI agents who arrested her probably aren't really FBI, or if they are, they're working for someone else. Either way, Sarah Chen is in danger. Wilson's phone rang. He answered, listened, his face going hard. Understood. Keep looking. He hung up. The SUV disappeared into a parking garage downtown. No exit footage. Wherever they took her, it wasn't the FBI field office. Oh my God, Sterling whispered. Did they... I don't know, but we're going to find out. Dr. Richard Morrison stood at a podium in the hospital's media room, facing a dozen news cameras. The bus crash had made national news. 7 lives saved in Chicago bus explosion. The hospital wanted to capitalize on the positive coverage. I'd like to thank our entire trauma team, Morrison was saying, for their exceptional work last night. Their quick thinking and expertise saved multiple lives. A reporter raised her hand. Dr. Morrison, we're hearing that one surgeon in particular, a Dr. Sarah Chen, performed multiple emergency procedures. Can you tell us more about her? Morrison's smile faltered. Dr. Chen is no longer with our institution. Why not? Personnel matters are confidential. Another reporter. We have sources saying she was arrested by the FBI last night. Can you confirm? Morrison's face went red. No comment. Is Northwestern employing surgeons with fraudulent credentials? I said no comment. The press conference was deteriorating rapidly when the doors at the back of the room burst open. Major General Wilson strode in, followed by his team. Dr. Morrison, Wilson said, his voice carrying across the room, I'm going to need you to stop talking. Right now. The cameras loved Wilson. The reporters sensed something big. They crowded around as he took the podium. My name is Major General James Wilson, United States Army. I'm here regarding Dr. Sarah Chen, who worked at this hospital until early this morning. Morrison tried to interrupt. General, this is highly irregular. Wilson ignored him. Dr. Chen is not a fraud. She's a decorated combat veteran with 8 years of service in Special Operations medical support. She holds a legitimate medical degree from Johns Hopkins University, completed her residency at Walter Reed National Military Medical Center, and served with distinction in some of the most dangerous combat zones in recent American military history. The reporters were frantically taking notes. Dr. Chen was not arrested by the FBI last night. She was abducted by individuals impersonating federal agents. We are currently working with the real FBI to locate her. Gasps from the crowd. Furthermore, Wilson continued, I've reviewed the security footage from last night's mass casualty event. Dr. Chen personally saved 6 lives through procedures that most surgeons wouldn't attempt outside a fully equipped operating room. She is, without question, one of the finest trauma surgeons I've ever had the privilege of witnessing. He turned to look directly at Morrison. Any suggestion that she is a fraud, a liability, or anything less than an exceptional physician is not only wrong, it's offensive. Morrison's face had gone from red to white. General Wilson, I had no idea. You had no idea because you didn't bother to find out. You made assumptions based on her age and her appearance. You dismissed her without ever asking about her background or her capabilities. Wilson looked back at the cameras. If anyone has information about Dr. Chen's whereabouts, please contact the FBI immediately. And to the people who took her, you've made a very serious mistake. Dr. Chen has friends, powerful friends, people who owe her their lives, and were coming for her. While Wilson held his press conference, his team was already working. They'd pulled phone records, tracked the fake FBI agents' movements, found the parking garage where the SUV had disappeared. We've got something, one of the agents called out. Security camera 2 blocks from the garage shows a different vehicle, a white van, leaving around 2:30 a.m. Plates are registered to a shell company. Can you track it? Already did. Van stopped at a warehouse in Gary, Indiana, 45 minutes from here. Wilson's jaw tightened. Get me a tactical team. Now. The warehouse was exactly what you'd expect from a criminal operation. Abandoned industrial building, broken windows, no visible security, which meant there was definitely security. Wilson's team, now joined by an FBI tactical unit, surrounded the building. Thermal imaging showed 3 heat signatures inside. 1 was sitting down, 2 were moving around. We go in quiet, Wilson said. Rescue priority. Chen first, apprehension second. They moved in through 3 entrances simultaneously. The FBI agents, Hill and Ross, were caught completely by surprise. They'd been watching TV, waiting for instructions from whoever had hired them. They never saw the tactical team coming. Both were on the ground, hands zip-tied, before they could react. Sarah Chen was in a back room, handcuffed to a chair. Her lip was split. Her left eye was swollen. But she was conscious, and she was pissed. Took you long enough, she said when she saw Wilson. They brought Sarah back to Northwestern in Wilson's vehicle. She refused the ambulance, refused to be checked out in the ER. I'm fine, she insisted. Just tired. You're hurt? I've had worse, a lot worse. The hospital was chaos when they arrived. The press conference had gone viral. Video of Wilson defending Sarah was all over social media. Reporters were camped outside the main entrance. Wilson helped Sarah through a side door, avoiding the cameras. Dr. Morrison was waiting in the lobby. He looked like he'd aged 10 years in the past 3 hours. Dr. Chen, he started, I owe you an apology. Save it, Sarah said. Her voice was cold. Where's the boy from Bay 4? Morrison blinked. What? The teenager with the abdominal injury. The one I triaged last night. Where is he? He's in surgery now. Dr. Sterling is operating. Sarah's face went pale. Sterling? Sterling's operating on him? Yes, Sarah was already running, moving faster than she should have been able to with her injuries. Wilson followed, along with Morrison and half the hospital staff. Sarah burst through the OR doors. Sterling was at the table, hands inside a teenager's abdomen, looking confused and panicked. What's the status? Sarah demanded. Dr. Chen, you can't be in here. What is the status? The scrub nurse answered. Intra-abdominal. Hemorrhage. Can't locate the source. Pressure is dropping. Sarah didn't waste time arguing. She pushed Sterling aside, took his place at the table. Retract here. Suction there. I need better visualization. Her hands, those trembling hands that everyone had mocked, were perfectly steady. She reached into the boy's abdomen, feeling for the bleeder. There. Splenic laceration. It didn't show on the initial CT because it was delayed. Clamp. She clamped the splenic artery. The bleeding slowed. Get me a stapler. I need to do a splenectomy. Now. 20 minutes later, the boy was stable. The spleen was out. The bleeding was controlled. Sarah stepped back from the table, her hands finally shaking again. Sterling stood in the corner, watching. Humiliated. Exposed. While Wilson stood in the doorway, arms crossed, shaking his head. That, he said to no one in particular, is why we call her the Ghost, because she saves people who should be dead. This time, it was different. This time, Sarah sat at the head of the table. Wilson sat to her right. To her left was Colonel Amanda Reeves, Army Medical Corps. Around the table, the hospital's chairman of surgery, the chief of staff, Dr. Morrison, and Dr. Sterling. The two fake FBI agents, whose real names turned out to be Marcus Hill and Jennifer Ross, contractors working for a private intelligence firm, were in federal custody. They'd already started talking. Dr. Chen, the chairman of surgery, said, I owe you an apology, several apologies. If I'd known... You didn't ask, Sarah interrupted. I've been here 6 weeks. You never once asked about my background, my experience, my qualifications. Your credentials checked out. Did they? Or did you just assume they did because I looked old? Broken? Silence around the table. Sarah continued. I have a medical degree from Johns Hopkins. I completed my residency at Walter Reed. I served 8 years as a combat surgeon, 3 of them embedded, with special operations units. I've performed over 400 trauma surgeries under fire. I've worked in conditions that would make your worst nightmare look easy. She looked directly at Sterling. And I've forgotten more about trauma surgery than you'll ever learn. Sterling couldn't meet her eyes. Dr. Chen, Colonel Reeves said gently, we need to talk about what happened. About why you disappeared. About who sent those contractors after you. Sarah nodded. Operation Silent. Storm. That's what started everything. It was 2009, Sarah began. I was assigned to a joint task force operating in eastern Afghanistan. We were targeting high-value Taliban commanders. The operations were successful. Too successful. She pulled out a folder, one Wilson had brought with him, opened it to reveal classified documents, photos, mission reports. We eliminated 14 targets over 6 months. Every single operation was approved by command. Every single one followed the rules of engagement. We did everything right. But what we didn't know, what we couldn't have known, was that several of those targets were intelligence assets, double agents working for both the Taliban and U.S. intelligence, people who were supposed to be kept alive because they were providing information. Wilson picked up the narrative. When those assets were eliminated, someone in the intelligence community got very nervous because those assets had information about certain operations, certain deals, things that powerful people didn't want exposed. The easiest solution, Sarah continued, was to eliminate everyone involved in Operation Silent Storm. Make it look like accidents, combat deaths, medical issues. She pulled out more documents, death certificates, accident reports. Captain James Rodriguez, killed in a training accident, helicopter malfunction. Lieutenant Karen Vasquez, car accident, lost control on a mountain road. Sergeant First Class David Park, drug overdose, except he'd never touched drugs in his life. Staff Sergeant Maria Gonzalez, suicide. Left a note, except her handwriting didn't match. Sarah's voice was shaking now. They killed my entire team, everyone except me and 2 others. And they're still out there, still in danger. That's why you faked your death, Morrison said quietly. That's why I let everyone believe I died in that IED attack. Because if I stayed alive, if my name stayed in the system, I'd be next. The contractors who grabbed you last night, Wilson said, were hired by a firm called Blackstone Security Solutions. BSS has connections to certain elements within U.S. intelligence. Unofficial connections. Colonel Reeves pulled up files on her laptop. We've been investigating BSS for 2 years. They're a front company. They do work that official agencies can't or won't do. Assassinations, kidnappings, intimidation. Someone within the intelligence community learned that you were alive, Wilson continued, that you'd come out of hiding, that you were working at a civilian hospital under your own name, or close enough to it, and they sent BSS to neutralize the threat. They were going to kill me, Sarah said flatly. Yes? Why didn't they? Why the fake arrest? Why not just shoot me in the parking lot? Because, Wilson said, they wanted information first. They wanted to know who else knew about Operation Silent Storm, who you'd told, What evidence? You had? Sarah laughed bitterly. I don't have evidence. I destroyed everything, burned it all. I just wanted to disappear. They didn't believe that, so they grabbed you, took you to that warehouse, and planned to interrogate you, and then kill me, Sarah finished. Yes. The room was silent. Sterling cleared his throat. General Wilson, I don't understand. If this is all true, why did you let Dr. Chen come work here? Why expose her? Wilson looked at Sterling with barely disguised contempt. I didn't let her do anything. Dr. Chen is a civilian. She can work wherever she wants. When I found out she'd taken this position, I came to warn her, to tell her she was taking a risk. But you came 6 hours too late, Sarah said. Yes, I'm sorry. Don't be. I knew the risk. I took it anyway. Colonel Reeves opened another file. For those of you who don't understand Dr. Chen's background, let me provide some context. She displayed a photo. Sarah in combat. Fatigues, much younger, surrounded by soldiers in a desert landscape. Captain Sarah Chen joined the Army Medical Corps in 2001, commissioned directly from Johns Hopkins. She specifically requested deployment to combat zones. Another photo? Sarah operating in a field hospital. Dust and blood everywhere. She completed her first tour in Iraq in 2003, Fallujah. She was attached to a Marine unit during the heaviest fighting. In one 72-hour period, she performed 27 surgeries. All of her patients survived. Gasps around the table. For that, she received her first Bronze Star. More photos. Sarah in Afghanistan. Sarah receiving medals. Sarah with various military units. Second tour, Afghanistan, 2004-2005. Assigned to the 75th Ranger Regiment. This is when she got her nickname, the Ghost, because she could appear out of nowhere, save your life, and disappear before you even knew her name. Third tour, Yemen, 2006. Classified operations. Doctor, Chen can't talk about what she did there, but I can tell you it involved combat medicine in conditions that would have killed most surgeons. Fourth tour, Afghanistan again, 2007-2008. This is when she was embedded with special operations units, Tier 1 operators, the kind of soldiers whose names don't appear on rosters. Fifth tour. That's enough, Colonel, Sarah interrupted. They get the picture. But Reeves wasn't done. No, I don't think they do. Dr. Chen, how many combat missions did you participate in? Sarah was quiet for a moment. 147. How many soldiers did you treat in the field? I stopped counting after 400. How many times were you personally under fire? 83 times. How many times were you wounded? Sarah lifted her pant leg, showed the scars on her calf, then rolled up her sleeve. More scars on her arm. Shrapnel from a mortar round. March 2008. 3 men standing next to me died. I spent 6 months in physical therapy, learning to walk again. She showed her hands. Notice the tremor? Not nerve damage. PTSD. My body remembers being under fire, remembers the explosions, the screaming, the blood. She looked around the table. Any questions? No one spoke. There's one more thing, Wilson said. Dr. Chen, you saved 7 lives last night. 6 critically injured patients from that bus crash, plus the teenage boy this morning when you stopped Dr. Sterling from killing him. Sterling flinched, but didn't argue. One of those patients was a Marine, Sergeant Daniel Torres, 24 years old, severe chest trauma. You performed an emergency thoracotomy and saved his life. Sarah nodded. I remember. Sergeant Torres served in Afghanistan, 2012 deployment. He was part of a patrol that got ambushed. IED strike. Half his unit was killed. He was wounded, bleeding out. Sarah's face went pale. Wilson, don't. A combat surgeon appeared, operated on him in the SR field, saved his life. He never saw her face, never learned her name, but he never forgot her voice. Wilson pulled out his phone, played a video. It showed Sergeant Torres in his hospital room, recovering. A nurse was changing his IV when he suddenly sat up. That voice, he said on the video. I know that voice. The camera followed as Torres got out of bed, pulled his IV pole, walked into the hallway. He stopped outside the OR where Sarah was operating on the teenage boy. He stood there, listening through the door. Then he straightened and saluted. That's her, he said to the camera. That's the Ghost, the surgeon who saved my life 10 years ago. The video ended. Sarah's eyes were wet. I didn't know he was one of my patients. He knows now, Wilson said. He's asking to see you. They brought Sarah to Torres's room. He was sitting up in bed, chest wrapped in bandages, but alert and alive. When Sarah entered, he tried to stand. She stopped him with a gesture. Rest, Sergeant. Ma'am, Torres said, his voice choked with emotion. I never got to thank you. 10 years ago, you saved my life and disappeared before I could... You don't need to thank me. I was doing my job. No, ma'am. You were doing more than your job. I was dead. Everyone said so. But you wouldn't let me die. You operated on me for 3 hours, under fire, while mortars were falling around us. Sarah remembered. God, she remembered. That day. That terrible, beautiful day when she'd kept a 19-year-old Marine alive through sheer force of will. You told me something, Torres continued. While you were operating, you said, "You're not dying today, Marine, not on my watch." And you didn't, Sarah said softly, because of you. Torres struggled to sit up straighter. I got married last year. My wife, she's pregnant, our first kid, a daughter, and I get to meet her because of you. Sarah's tears were flowing freely now. What are you, naming her? She asked. Sarah, Torres said. We're naming her Sarah, after the ghost who saved her father's life. Sarah broke down, just completely broke down. All the fear, the pain, the 15 years of running, it all came out. Torres reached out, took her trembling hand. Thank you, he said. Thank you for saving me. Thank you for being here to save me again last night. Thank you for not giving up. Wilson stood in the doorway watching. Even he had tears in his eyes. This, he said to the hospital administrators who'd followed, is who Sarah Chen is. Not a fraud, not a liability, a hero. Dr. Morrison stood outside Torres's room waiting. When Sarah emerged, he stepped forward. Dr. Chen, Sarah held up a hand. Just don't. I need to apologize for how I treated you, for how I spoke to you, for assuming I was incompetent because I'm older, because my hands shake, because I don't look like your idea of a talented surgeon. Morrison's face flushed. Yes, all of that. I was wrong, completely, inexcusably wrong. Yes, you were. Can you forgive me? Sarah studied him. This man who'd humiliated her in front of colleagues, who'd built a case to have her fired, who'd bet money on her failure. I don't know, she said honestly. Maybe someday, but not today. She walked past him toward the elevator. Morrison called after her. Dr. Chen, please, let me make it right. Name your terms, I'll do anything. Sarah stopped, turned. Resign, she said. What? Resign from Northwestern. Today. Because the next time you encounter a doctor who doesn't look like your idealized version of what a surgeon should be, the next time you meet someone who's older or female or non-white or disabled or just different, you'll do the same thing. You'll mock them, dismiss them, destroy their confidence. I wouldn't. You would, because that's who you are. And this hospital, these patients, deserve better. Sarah got on the elevator. The doors closed. Morrison stood alone in the hallway. By 5 p.m., his resignation letter was on the chairman's desk. Dr. Marcus Sterling sat in the attendings lounge, staring at his phone. The video of General Wilson's press conference had been viewed 3 million times. The hashtag #DarkTheGhost was trending worldwide. Every news outlet was running stories about the heroic combat surgeon who'd saved 7 lives despite being mocked and dismissed by her colleagues. And Sterling's face was in several of those stories. Someone had leaked the video of Sarah being led out in handcuffs. The video where Sterling and Morrison watched her go with satisfaction on their faces. The comment section was brutal. These doctors should be ashamed. She saved lives while they made bets about her failing. This is what ageism and sexism look like. I hope they all get fired. His phone rang. His father. Marcus, we need to talk about this situation. Dad, it's not what it looks like. It looks like you and several other doctors mocked and humiliated a decorated war hero. Is that accurate? Sterling's mouth went dry. I didn't know she was... You didn't know because you didn't ask. You made assumptions. You created a hostile work environment. And now the Sterling family name is associated with this disaster. Dad, please... I'm pulling our foundation's funding from Northwestern, effective immediately. And Marcus, you're going to apologize. Publicly. Today. The line went dead. Sterling sat there, phone in hand, his career crumbling around him. A knock on the door. Sarah Chen stood in the doorway. Dr. Sterling, can we talk? Sterling stood. Dr. Chen, I'm so sorry. I was wrong about you. About everything. Yes, you were? I judged you without knowing you. I made assumptions based on your appearance, your age. I was cruel and unprofessional and you almost killed that boy, Sarah interrupted. The teenager in Bay 4. If I hadn't come back when I did, he would have died on your table. Sterling's face went white. You hesitated. You couldn't find the bleeder. You were in over your head. And instead of calling for help, you kept operating because your ego wouldn't let you admit you needed assistance. Dr. Chen, I swear I'll never... You're not a bad surgeon, Marcus. You have good hands, good technique. You could be excellent. But your arrogance is going to kill someone. Maybe today. Maybe tomorrow. But eventually someone will die because you refuse to admit your limitations. She stepped closer. I'm not asking you to resign. I'm not going to destroy your career. But I'm going to give you a choice. What choice? Option 1. You continue as you are. Arrogant, dismissive, cruel to anyone you perceive as weak. And someday, someone will die because of it. And you'll have to live with that forever. Or, Sterling whispered, Option 2. You change. You learn. Humility. You recognize that the patients, always the patients, come first. That every person you meet might have knowledge you don't. That experience and wisdom can look different than you expect. Sarah pulled out a business card, handed it to Sterling. This is the number for a therapist who specializes in working with medical professionals. She helped me when I came back from Afghanistan, when my PTSD was so bad I couldn't hold a scalpel without shaking. Sterling took the card with trembling fingers. Call her, Sarah said. Today, because you don't just need to learn how to be a better surgeon, Marcus. You need to learn how to be a better human being. She turned to leave. Dr. Chen? Yes? Why are you helping me? After everything I did to you? Sarah looked back. Because someone helped me once, when I was young and arrogant and convinced I knew everything. A senior surgeon, older, with hands that shook from a previous injury. I dismissed him, mocked him, until he saved my life during a training exercise that went wrong. He could have let me fail, let me learn the hard way, but instead he taught me, and I'm still here because of him. She smiled slightly. Pay it forward, Dr. Sterling. That's all any of us can do. Sarah sat in the chairman's office. General Wilson was there, so was Colonel Reeves, and the chairman of surgery, Dr. William Chen, no relation. Dr. Chen, Chairman Chen said, first, on behalf of Northwestern Memorial, I want to apologize for how you were treated, for the hostile environment, for our failure to recognize your exceptional skills and background. Apology noted, Sarah said. Second, I want to offer you a position, attending trauma surgeon, full privileges, competitive salary, and an opportunity to help rebuild our trauma program with a focus on combat casualty care and disaster response. Sarah was quiet for a long moment. I appreciate the offer, she said finally, but I need to decline. Shocked silence. You're turning us down, the chairman asked. I am. May I ask why? Sarah gestured to Wilson and Reeves. Because the general has made me a better offer. Wilson smiled. Dr. Chen has agreed to return to active duty. As a civilian contractor, technically, since she's past the age limit for direct commission, but effectively, she's coming back. To do what? Chairman Chen asked. To build something, Sarah said. A training program for combat medics and surgeons, teaching the techniques I learned in the field, the procedures that aren't in textbooks, the things that save lives when everything else fails. Reeves added, the Department of Defense has been trying to preserve combat medical knowledge from the wars in Iraq and Afghanistan. We've lost too many experienced surgeons to retirement, PTSD, or other circumstances. Dr. Chen represents a wealth of knowledge that we can't afford to lose. Where will you be based? The chairman asked. Walter Reed and various training facilities around the country. I'll be traveling, teaching, consulting on complex cases. But Northwestern will be one of our partner institutions, Sarah interrupted. I'll be back regularly to teach, to operate, to work with your trauma team. But not as a resident, not as someone to be dismissed or belittled. As a professor, Wilson said, professor of combat casualty care. It's a new position we're creating specifically for Dr. Chen. Chairman Chen nodded slowly. We'd be honored to participate. They gathered in the hospital's main conference room. Every doctor, nurse, and staff member who could be spared from patient care was there. News cameras lined the back wall. Chairman Chen stood at the podium. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for coming. As many of you know, our institution experienced a significant event last night and this morning. Dr. Sarah Chen, who has been working here as a surgical resident, was revealed to be a decorated combat surgeon with an extraordinary military record. Murmurs through the crowd. What you may not know is the full extent of Dr. Chen's accomplishments. Allow me to share them with you. He read from a document. 8 years of combat service, 5 tours of duty, 473 patients treated in combat conditions, Bronze Star with Valor, Silver Star, 2 Purple Hearts, Combat Medical Badge with 3 oak leaf clusters, Army Commendation, Medal for Valor, and recognition from 4 different special operations units as the finest combat surgeon they've ever worked with. The room was silent. Dr. Chen saved 7 lives last night during our mass casualty event. She performed procedures under conditions that most surgeons would refuse to attempt, and she did it while being dismissed, mocked, and discriminated against by members of our own staff. Chairman Chen's voice hardened. This stops now. Today. Effective. Immediately, Northwestern Memorial is implementing new policies regarding workplace respect, anti-discrimination, and recognition of experience from non-traditional backgrounds. Additionally, Dr. Morrison has resigned. Dr. Sterling has been placed on probation pending completion of professional development training. And Dr. Sarah Chen, he paused, has accepted a position with the Department of Defense to develop a new combat casualty care training program. She will maintain an affiliation with Northwestern as a visiting professor, and we are honored to have her expertise available to our institution. He gestured to Sarah, who was sitting in the front row. Dr. Chen, would you like to say a few words? Sarah stood, walked to the podium, looked out at the faces staring back at her. Some looked ashamed, some looked inspired, all looked humbled. I have 3 things to say, Sarah began. First, thank you to the nurses and staff who treated me with respect these past 6 weeks, who judged me on my work, not my appearance. You know who you are. Second, to those who dismissed me, mocked me, or bet against me, I forgive you. Not because you deserve it, but because holding on to anger will destroy me faster than any enemy ever could. Third, to every young doctor in this room, and every old one, remember this. Every patient deserves your best effort. Every colleague deserves your respect. And every person you meet knows something you don't. She smiled slightly. Stay humble. Stay curious. And never ever assume that someone can't teach you something just because they don't look like your idea of a teacher. She stepped back from the podium. The room erupted in applause. The real FBI, not the contractors who'd grabbed Sarah, had taken over the investigation. Special Agent Catherine Morgan sat across from Marcus Hill, not his real name they'd discovered. It was Marcus Thornton, former CIA contractor, in an interrogation room. Let's go through this again, Mr. Thornton. Who hired you? Thornton stared at the table. He'd already asked for a lawyer. Twice? But he kept talking anyway because the alternative, federal kidnapping charges, impersonating a federal agent, conspiracy to commit murder, meant life in prison. I got the job through Blackstone Security Solutions. They contracted me for a recovery operation. That's what they called it. Recovery. Recovery of what? A person of interest, someone who had information about historical events that certain parties wanted to remain historical. You mean Operation Silent Storm? Thornton's head snapped up. How do you... We know about Operation Silent Storm, Mr. Thornton. We know about the targets that were eliminated. We know about the intelligence assets that were lost. And we know that someone in the government has been systematically eliminating everyone connected to that operation. I don't know who hired BSS, I swear. I just know they paid well. Very well. $250,000 for the job. The job being? Grab Dr. Chen, take her to the safe house, interrogate her about what she knew and who she told. Then, he trailed off. Then kill her, Agent Morgan finished. Thornton said nothing, which was answer enough. Who else was involved? My partner, Jennifer Ross. That's not her real name either, it's Jennifer Collins, former NSA. She's the one who handled the technical side. Fake badges, fake credentials. The SUV, registered to the FBI. Where is she now? In custody. Your people grabbed her at her apartment. Agent Morgan leaned back. Mr. Thornton, I'm going to be straight with you. You're facing multiple federal charges. Your only chance at reducing your sentence is full cooperation. That means names. That means following the money. That means telling us everything about who gave Blackstone Security Solutions the order to eliminate Dr. Chen. And if I don't cooperate, then you'll spend the rest of your life in a maximum security federal prison. And the people who hired you, they'll keep killing. More victims, more families destroyed. All because you chose to protect the identity of people who would happily throw you under the bus to save themselves. Thornton was quiet for a long time. Then he said, I want a deal, full immunity, witness protection. That's not my decision to make, but I'll bring it to the U.S. Attorney. I'll tell you everything. Names, account him, numbers, meeting locations, everything. Start talking. Sarah sat alone at a corner table, eating hospital food that tasted like cardboard. She was exhausted. Her split lip throbbed. Her swollen eye ached. Her knee, always her knee, felt like someone had driven a spike through it. But she was alive, and 7 other people were alive because of her. Mind if I sit? She looked up. One of the nurses from the night shift. Young woman, maybe 26, with kind eyes and a tired smile. "Please," Sarah said. The nurse sat, didn't say anything for a moment, just opened her own sad cafeteria meal and started eating. "I wanted to apologize," the nurse said finally. "For last night, when they took you away, I should have said something, should have defended you, but I was scared." "Scared of what?" "Of going against the doctors, against Sterling and Morrison. They have power here. I'm just a nurse. If I'd spoken up..." She shrugged. Sarah reached across the table, touched the nurse's hand. "What's your name?" "Jessica. Jessica Rodriguez." "Jessica, you have nothing to apologize for. You did your job last night. You helped me save those patients. That's what matters. But I let them mock you, let them treat you like you were incompetent. That's not your responsibility. That's on them, not you." Jessica's eyes filled with tears. "You're amazing. What you did last night, I've never seen anything like it. The way you moved, the way you just knew what to do. No hesitation, no fear." "There was plenty of fear," Sarah said quietly. "I'm terrified every time I operate. Terrified I'll make a mistake. Terrified someone will die because I'm not fast enough or smart enough or good enough. But you don't show it. Because showing fear doesn't help the patient. They need me to be confident, strong, steady, even when I'm falling apart inside." Jessica nodded. "Is that what you learned in the military?" "That's what I learned in life. The military just refined it." They ate in comfortable silence for a while. Then Jessica asked, "Are you really leaving? Going back to the military?" "Technically, I'm going back as a civilian contractor. But yes, I'm leaving Northwestern." "We're going to miss you." "You barely know me." "I know you enough. And after last night, after seeing what you can do, I wish you were staying. We need more surgeons like you." Sarah smiled. "There are other surgeons like me. You just have to look past the surface. Past the age and the appearance and the assumptions." Marcus Sterling sat on his couch, staring at the business card Sarah had given him. Dr. Elizabeth Warren, Ph.D., specialist in medical professional burnout, PTSD, and ethical practice. He'd Googled her. She was legitimate, well-regarded. Had worked with doctors returning from military service, doctors dealing with trauma, doctors struggling with the pressures of modern medicine. His phone buzzed. Text from his father. "Have you called yet?" Sterling picked up his phone, stared at Dr. Warren's number. Then he dialed. She answered on the second ring. "Dr. Warren." "Hi, my name is Marcus Sterling. I'm a surgical resident at Northwestern Memorial. Dr. Sarah Chen gave me your card and suggested I call." "Ah, Dr. Chen, I heard about what happened at your hospital. Are you the Dr. Sterling?" Sterling felt shame wash over him. "Yes, I'm the one who treated her terribly. Who mocked her. Who almost killed a patient because I was too arrogant to admit I needed help." "Well," Dr. Warren said, her voice neither judgmental nor sympathetic, just matter of fact, "that's a good start. Recognizing the problem is the first step toward fixing it. Can you help me? That depends. Do you want to change? Really want to? Or are you calling because someone told you to?" Sterling thought about it. Thought about the teenage boy who'd almost died. Thought about Sarah's hands steady and sure, finding the bleeder he'd missed. Thought about his own hands, shaking with panic. "I want to change," he said. "I don't want to be the surgeon who kills someone because he was too proud to ask for help." "Good. Then we can work together. When can you come in?" "Tomorrow?" "Tomorrow works. I'll see you at 2 p.m. Sterling hung up. Felt something he hadn't felt in a long time. Hope. General Wilson stood in the warehouse where Sarah had been held. FBI forensics teams were still processing the scene. They'd found blood, Sarah's blood, on the chair where she'd been handcuffed. Found evidence of physical abuse. Found documents detailing the interrogation plan. Colonel Reeves stood beside him, reviewing the documents. "They were going to torture her," Reeves said flatly. "Waterboarding, sleep deprivation, chemical enhancement, all the black site techniques." "But they didn't get the chance," Wilson said. "No, thanks to you." Wilson shook his head. "Thanks to the GPS tracker I had sewn into Sarah's jacket 3 years ago." Reeves blinked. "You tracked her?" "Well, not actively, but I've always known, that someone was still looking for her, still trying to tie up loose ends from Operation Silent Storm. So I gave her a jacket, told her it was just a gift, didn't tell her about the tracker." "That's manipulative, paranoid, an invasion of privacy?" Wilson smiled grimly. "Yes, to all three, but it saved her life. Does she know?" "She will. I'm going to tell her. Tonight?" Reeves looked around the warehouse. "Who's behind this, James?" Who ordered the hit on Sarah? We're going to find out. Thornton is talking. Collins is talking. And once we start following the money trail, how high does this go? High enough that people are scared. High enough that 15 years later, they're still trying to eliminate witnesses. Politicians, intelligence officials, defense contractors. Could be any of them. Could be all of them. Wilson's phone rang. He answered, listened, his face darkening. When? Pause. Where? Pause. I'll be there in 20 minutes. He hung up, turned to Reeves. Thornton and Collins both just tried to commit suicide, within 5 minutes of each other, while in separate custody. That's not a coincidence. No, it's not. Both Thornton and Collins had survived. Barely. They'd used the same method, swallowed pills they'd somehow smuggled in, pills that shouldn't have been available, pills that had appeared in their cells as if by magic, which meant someone on the inside was compromised. Agent Morgan stood in the medical bay, watching as doctors pumped the prisoners' stomachs. Who gave them the pills? Wilson demanded. We don't know, but we're reviewing security footage from the last 4 hours. Someone smuggled something in. Or someone on your staff did it. Morgan's jaw tightened. My people are clean. Are they? Because someone wanted Thornton and Collins, dead before they could name names. Someone with access to this facility. Someone who knew they were talking. We'll find out who. You better, because if you don't, Sarah Chen is still in danger, and so is everyone else connected to Operation Silent Storm. Wilson's phone rang again. He answered. Listened. His face went pale. When? Pause. Jesus Christ, where's he now? Pause. Don't move him. I'm coming. He hung up, looked at Morgan. Sergeant Torres, the Marine that Sarah saved. Last night and 10 years ago, someone just tried to kill him in his hospital room at Northwestern. The would-be assassin had been caught. Hospital security had tackled him before he could get to Torres's room. But it had been close. Too close. Wilson arrived to find the man in handcuffs being held by Chicago PD. Young guy, maybe 30, military bearing, professional. Who are you? Wilson demanded. The man said nothing. Wilson grabbed him by the collar. I asked you a question. Who sent you? General, please. One of the cops tried to intervene. This man just tried to kill a Marine in a hospital, while that Marine was recovering from injuries sustained in a mass casualty event. So I'm going to ask again, who sent you? The man smiled. You'll never find out, because everyone talks eventually. Everyone except me. He bit down hard on something in his mouth. Cyanide, someone shouted. They tried to stop it, tried to save him. But the poison worked fast. The assassin was dead within 90 seconds. Wilson stood over the body, fury and frustration radiating off him. This isn't over, he said to no one in particular. Whoever's behind this, they're still out there, and they're not going to stop. Sarah Chen sat beside Torres's bed. He was still unconscious. They'd sedated him after the attempted assassination. Put him under guard. 3 armed officers outside his door. Wilson entered quietly. How is he? Wilson asked. Stable. Scared. Confused. Someone tried to kill him, General. Because he recognized me. Because he can connect me to Operation Silent Storm. I know. Who's doing this? I don't know yet, but we're going to find out. Sarah looked up at Wilson. Her eyes were hard. Cold. The eyes of someone who'd seen too much death. I want to help. I want to find whoever's behind this. Sarah, you're not trained for this? I'm trained for combat. I'm trained for survival. I'm trained to improvise and adapt. That's more relevant than whatever FBI manual you're following. And Wilson considered. What are you suggesting? I'm suggesting we use me as bait. Let word get out that I'm back, that I'm alive, that I'm working with you to expose what happened during Operation Silent Storm. That's suicide. No, suicide is hiding for the rest of my life. Living in fear. Looking over my shoulder every day wondering when they'll find me. I'm done hiding, General. I'm done running. Sarah stood. We flush them out, force them to make a move, and when they do, we're ready. That's incredibly dangerous. Everything I've done for the last 15 years has been dangerous. This is no different. Wilson studied her. This woman who'd saved hundreds of lives, who'd survived 8 years of combat, who'd faked her own death and spent 15 years in hiding. All right, he said. But we do this my way, with proper backup, with a plan. Fine. What's the plan? They set up in a conference. Room at the FBI field office. Sarah, Wilson, Reeves, Agent Morgan, and a half-dozen other federal agents. Here's what we know, Morgan began, displaying information on a large screen. Blackstone Security Solutions. is a front company for a larger organization called Stratton Global. Stratton has contracts with the Department of Defense, the CIA, the State Department, and half a dozen other agencies. They do officially sanctioned work, security, logistics, training, but they also have a black operations division that does other things, unsanctioned things. She pulled up more documents. In the past 10 years, Stratton has been connected to at least 20 assassinations worldwide, all of them officially unsolved, all of them targeting people who had knowledge of sensitive government operations. Operation Silent Storm is one of several operations that Stratton is trying to bury. They're eliminating witnesses, erasing records, making the whole thing disappear. Why? Sarah asked. Because, Wilson said, someone in the government used those Taliban intelligence assets for illegal operations. Drug trafficking, arms dealing, maybe worse. When you eliminated those assets during Operation Silent Storm, you disrupted a highly profitable criminal enterprise. Sarah felt sick. You're telling me I've been running for 15 years because I interfered with drug deals? You interfered with operations that generated billions of dollars for very powerful people who don't like loose ends. Who are they? We don't know yet, but we're going to find out. Using you as bait? They held another press conference. This time, Sarah was front and center. My name is Dr. Sarah Chen. Some of you know me as the Ghost. I'm here to make a statement. Cameras flashed. Reporters leaned forward. 15 years ago, I faked my own death. I did this to escape people who wanted me dead because of my involvement in a classified military operation. That operation disrupted illegal activities being conducted by people within the U.S. government. Gasps, murmurs. I'm done hiding. I'm done running. Tonight, I'm challenging the people behind these illegal activities to come forward, to answer for their crimes, to face justice. If you're watching this, and I know you are, understand that I'm not afraid anymore. I have nothing left to lose, and I will not stop until the truth comes out. She leaned closer to the microphones. You tried to kill me. You tried to kill Sergeant Torres. You've killed members of my team, but you failed. We're all still here, and we're going to expose you. So come for me. Try again, because this time I'm ready. The press conference ended. Wilson pulled Sarah aside. That was incredibly reckless. That was the point. Now we wait. They didn't have to wait long. Sarah's phone, the burner phone Wilson had given her, rang at 2:17 a.m., unknown number. She answered. This is Chen. A voice, male, digitally distorted. Dr. Chen. That was a brave speech, also very stupid. Who is this? Someone who can make this all go away. Someone who can guarantee your safety and the safety of Sergeant Torres and everyone else you care about. In exchange for what? Your silence, permanently. You sign a non-disclosure agreement, you accept a very generous settlement, and you disappear. Again. And if I refuse, then you die, along with everyone connected to you. Your new friends at the FBI, General Wilson, Colonel Reeves, the nurses at Northwestern, will eliminate them all. Slowly. Painfully. And we'll make sure you watch before we kill you too. Sarah's hand tightened on the phone. Let me think about it. You have 24 hours. We'll be in touch. The line went dead. Sarah looked at the team of agents who'd been monitoring the call. Did you trace it? Bounced through 7 different countries. Ended at a server in Moscow. Dead end? But, Agent Morgan said, we got a voice sample. We can run it through NSA databases, see if we can match it to known individuals. While the NSA worked on the voice analysis, Sarah sat in the conference room, reviewing everything they knew. Operation Silent Storm. 2009, 14 targets eliminated, all Taliban commanders. All supposedly clean operations. Except 3 of the targets had been intelligence assets, double agents, providing information to U.S. intelligence while working with the Taliban. Why had those assets been kept alive? Because they were useful. Useful for what? Sarah started digging through classified documents that Wilson had pulled. Reports from Afghanistan, intelligence summaries, financial records. And then she found it. A series of reports about drug trafficking, opium production in Afghanistan, shipments moving through Taliban-controlled areas. U.S. intelligence had been tracking it. Or had they? Sarah found a notation. Oh, single line in a financial report. Asset compensation for operational assistance. She showed it to Wilson. What does this mean? Wilson studied it. His face went pale. It means we paid them. We paid the Taliban assets, not to provide intelligence, to facilitate drug shipments. The U.S. government was running drugs through Afghanistan? Not officially, but certain elements within the government, rogue elements, were using intelligence assets to move heroin, generating money for black operations. And when I eliminated those assets during Operation Silent Storm, you destroyed their drug pipeline, cost them billions. Sarah sat down heavily. I've been running for 15 years because I accidentally disrupted a drug trafficking operation run by my own government. Yes. Who knew about this? Who authorized it? That's what we need to find out. The NSA called back. We've got a match on the voice from the call. 92% confidence. Who is it? Wilson demanded. Deputy Assistant Director Thomas Blackwell, CIA, retired 2012, currently works as a consultant for, let me guess, Stratton Global. Yes. How did you know? Because everything connects to Stratton. They're the muscle. Blackwell is the brains. We need to bring him in, Agent Morgan said. For what? We have a voice sample from a masked call. That's not enough for an arrest warrant. Then we need more evidence. Sarah stood. I'll get it. How? By accepting his offer. I'll agree to meet. Wear a wire. Get him to confess. That's insane, Wilson said. That's the plan, Sarah corrected. They arranged everything carefully. Sarah would call back, accept the meeting, agree to sign the NDA and take the settlement. But she'd be wired. Audio and video, live feed to the FBI, and she'd have a tracking device. 3 of them, actually, sewn into her clothes, implanted under her skin, even embedded in a tooth. If something goes wrong, Wilson said, we're coming in, hard and fast. Nothing will go wrong, Sarah said with more confidence than she felt. She made the call at 5:47 a.m. The voice answered immediately. Dr. Chen, have you made your decision? I want to meet, face to face. I don't sign anything until I know who I'm dealing with. That's not how this works. Then no deal. I go public with everything I know. Names, operations, financial records, all of it. Silence on the line. Then, fine. Today. 6 p.m. Navy Pier. Come, alone. Any sign of law enforcement and the deal is off. Permanently. I'll be there. Sarah stood on Navy Pier, watching the sunset over Lake Michigan. The pier was crowded. Tourists, families, street performers. Good cover for both her backup and for any assassins. Wilson and his team were positioned around the pier. FBI snipers on nearby rooftops. Undercover agents mixed with the crowd. Sarah wore jeans, a jacket, and a button-down shirt, all of them hiding recording devices. At 6:14 p.m., a man approached. Not Blackwell, someone younger, military-bearing, definitely armed. Dr. Chen? That's me. Come with me. The boss wants to talk somewhere private. I thought we were meeting here. Change of plans. Sarah hesitated. This wasn't part of the plan. If she left with this man, she'd be off the grid, outside the perimeter. But if she refused, they'd know something was wrong. Lead the way, she said. They walked to the parking lot. A black SUV was waiting. The man opened the back door. Inside was Thomas Blackwell. He was older than his photos, maybe 65, with gray hair and cold eyes. He wore an expensive suit and had the confidence of someone who'd never been held accountable for anything. Dr. Chen, thank you for coming. Sarah climbed into the SUV. The door closed. The vehicle started moving. Where are we going? Somewhere we can talk privately, away from FBI snipers. Sarah's blood went cold. He knew about the surveillance. Don't look so surprised, Blackwell said. I used to run counterintelligence for the CIA. You think I can't spot a setup? Then why did you agree to meet? Because I wanted to see you, the famous ghost, the surgeon who's caused me so much trouble over the years. He smiled. It wasn't a kind smile. You've cost me a lot of money, Dr. Chen. Billions, actually. When you eliminated those assets in Afghanistan, you destroyed a very profitable operation. Drug trafficking. Among other things, drugs, weapons, information. We had a whole economy running through those Taliban connections, and you ruined it. So you killed my team. I killed the people who were loose ends, just like I'm going to kill you. Sarah's hand moved toward the panic button hidden in her jacket. Blackwell pulled out a gun. Don't. I know about the tracking devices. All 3 of them. We're going to remove them before we kill you. The SUV pulled into an abandoned warehouse. Sarah recognized it immediately. The same warehouse where they'd held her before. This is where you die, Dr. Chen. For real this time. They pulled Sarah out of the SUV roughly. 2 men, both armed, both professional. They forced her into the same room where she'd been held before. The same chair, the same handcuffs. Blackwell stood in front of her, gun in hand. Before we proceed, he said calmly, we need to remove those tracking devices. Strip her down, check everything. Sarah's mind raced. The panic button was in her jacket. The tracking devices were scattered. 1 in her bra, 1 in her shoe, 1 embedded under the skin of her left shoulder. If they found all three, Wilson would lose her signal, and she'd be dead before backup arrived. Wait, Sarah said. I'll tell you where they are. Just don't make this any more humiliating than it needs to be. Blackwell considered. Talk. One in my left shoe, one in my bra, one under my shoulder. Subcutaneous implant. Check, Blackwell ordered. They found the first two immediately, crushed them underfoot. The third required a knife. They cut into Sarah's shoulder, no anesthetic, just cold steel, and pulled out the small chip. Blood ran down her arm. Sarah didn't scream. Wouldn't give them the satisfaction. Good, Blackwell said. Now we can talk freely. Tell me, Blackwell said. Who else knows about Operation Silent Storm? Everyone. I did a press conference, remember? You gave vague details. I want specifics. Who have you told about the financial arrangements? The drug trafficking? The CIA involvement? Sarah said nothing. Blackwell nodded to one of his men. The man punched Sarah in the stomach. Hard. She gasped, unable to breathe. Let's try again. Who knows? Wilson, Reeves, the FBI. Specifically which FBI agents? Sarah gave them names. Real names. But she added a few fake ones, too. Misdirection. If Blackwell was planning to eliminate witnesses, at least she could send him after ghosts. What about documentation? Evidence? It's all in classified databases. I don't have access anymore. Another punch, this time to the face. Sarah felt her nose crack. Blood poured down her chin. Don't lie to me, Dr. Chen. I know you made copies before you disappeared. Where are they? Sarah smiled despite the pain, despite the blood. If I had copies, why would I have hidden for 15 years? I destroyed everything. Burned it all? There's no evidence. I don't believe you. I don't care what you believe. Blackwell raised the gun, pointed it at Sarah's head. Last chance. Where's the evidence? There is no evidence. You win. You covered it all up. Congratulations. Blackwell's finger tightened on the trigger. Then, the lights went out. The warehouse plunged into darkness. Gunfire erupted. Muzzle flashes lit up the space like lightning. Shouting, screaming, chaos. Sarah threw herself backward, chair and all, hitting the concrete hard. The handcuffs bit into her wrists, but she didn't care. She rolled, trying to find cover. More gunfire, closer now. Federal agents, drop your weapons. FBI tactical team. Wilson's backup. But how did they find her? The tracking devices were destroyed. Then Sarah remembered. The wire. The audio feed. They'd been listening the whole time. Flashbangs exploded. Even with her eyes closed, the light was blinding. The sound was deafening. When Sarah opened her eyes, the warehouse was flooded with light. Tactical flashlights. Laser sights. Dozens of FBI agents swarming in. Blackwell's men were on the ground, hands behind their heads, but Blackwell himself was gone. Where is he? Wilson demanded, helping Sarah out of the chair. He ran. Back door, maybe 30 seconds ago. How many men with him? Just one. The driver. Wilson barked orders into his radio. All units, suspect fleeing on foot. Deputy Assistant Director Thomas Blackwell. Male, 65. Gray hair, armed and dangerous. Do not let him escape. They burst out the back door. An alley stretched in both directions. Dark, narrow, perfect for an ambush. Wilson's team spread out, moving tactically, clearing corners, checking doorways. Sarah followed, unarmed but determined. Blackwell wasn't getting away. Not after everything he'd done. Not after 15 years of running. They heard footsteps, running, to the right. The team moved in pursuit. Blackwell had gone up, found a fire escape, climbed 6 stories to the rooftop. Wilson and Sarah reached the roof just as Blackwell was trying to jump to the next building. But he was old, slow, he didn't make it. He hung there, dangling from the ledge of the neighboring building, his fingers slipping. Help me, he shouted. Wilson walked to the edge, looked down at Blackwell hanging there. Why should I? I'll tell you everything. Names, locations, bank accounts, just help me up. Sarah joined Wilson at the edge, looked at the man who'd ordered her team killed, who'd tried to kill her, twice, who'd terrorized her for 15 years. You killed my friends, Sarah said quietly. You destroyed my life. You've murdered dozens of people to cover up your crimes. I was following orders, Blackwell screamed. I was just following orders. Whose orders? Senators, generals, people at the highest levels. I'll give you all of them. Just help me. His fingers were slipping. He had maybe 10 seconds before he fell. Sarah reached out her hand. Blackwell grabbed it desperately. Sarah pulled hard, brought him back over the edge. Onsal slammed him down onto the rooftop. You're under arrest, Wilson said, slapping handcuffs on Blackwell. Thomas Blackwell, you have the right to remain silent. Sarah stood there, breathing hard, blood still running from her broken nose. She'd survived. Again. They brought Sarah back to Northwestern. Her nose needed to be set. Her shoulder needed stitches. She was dehydrated and exhausted and in pain. But she was alive. Dr. Sterling was the one who treated her. He'd volunteered. Insisted, actually. I want to do this right, he'd told the attending on duty. I want to show Dr. Chen that I've learned something. Now he stood in front of her, setting up a suture tray. This is going to hurt, he said quietly. I'm sorry. I've had worse. Sterling numbed the area around her shoulder wound, cleaned it carefully. His hands were steady. His technique was perfect. You've been practicing, Sarah observed. I've been in therapy with Dr. Warren. 3 sessions so far. How's that going? Hard. She doesn't let me get away with anything. Makes me confront all my bullshit, all my arrogance and insecurity and fear. He started suturing, careful, precise stitches. I'm sorry, he said after a moment, for everything. I treated you terribly. I let my ego and my privilege blind me to who you really were. Apology accepted. Just like that. Just like that. You're trying to change. That's all anyone can ask. Sterling finished the sutures. Applied a bandage, stepped back. Your nose, he said. I should get someone more experienced to set it. You can do it. I trust you. Sterling looked shocked. You trust me? You've earned it. In the last 3 hours, you've shown me more growth than most people show in years. So yes, I trust you. Sterling set her nose. It hurt like hell, but he did it correctly. No hesitation, no panic. When he was done, Sarah said, You're going to be a good surgeon, Marcus. Maybe even a great one, if you keep working on yourself. Thank you, Sterling whispered. That means more than you know. They held yet another press conference. This time, FBI Director Susan Martinez stood at the podium. Today, federal agents arrested former CIA Deputy Assistant Director Thomas Blackwell on charges of conspiracy to commit murder, kidnapping, drug trafficking, and approximately 40 other federal crimes. Mr. Blackwell has been cooperating with investigators. He has provided names of other individuals involved in illegal operations connected to the war in Afghanistan. We expect multiple arrests in the coming weeks. This investigation was made possible by the bravery of Dr. Sarah Chen, a decorated combat veteran who risked her life to expose these crimes. The director stepped aside. Sarah took the podium. She looked terrible. Broken nose, bandaged shoulder, black eye, bruises everywhere, but she stood tall. 15 years ago, I was forced to choose between my identity and my life. I chose life. I went into hiding. I became someone else. Today, I'm reclaiming my identity. I'm Dr. Sarah Chen. Captain Sarah Chen, U.S. Army, retired. I'm a combat surgeon, a veteran, a survivor. To everyone who's ever been dismissed because of their age, their appearance, their background, remember that your worth is not determined by other people's limited vision. You are more than their assumptions. To the people who tried to kill me, you failed. I'm still here, and I'm not going anywhere. She stepped back from the podium. The press room erupted in applause. Sarah went to check on Torres. He was awake now, sitting up in bed, looking tired but alive. Ma'am, he said when she entered, you came back. I told you I would. I heard what happened. The FBI, the arrest. Are you okay? Sarah gestured to her injuries. I've had worse. Torres smiled. That's what you always say? It's always true. She sat down in the chair beside his bed. How are you feeling? Like I got blown up and then almost assassinated. But alive, thanks to you. You're welcome. Again. Torres reached into the drawer beside his bed, pulled out a small box. My wife came by earlier. Brought this. I want you to have it. Sarah opened the box. Inside was a medal. Not a military medal. Something handmade. A small bronze disc with the words, "The Ghost," engraved on it. I had it made after you saved me the first time, Torres explained. Carried it through 4 deployments. Figured it would bring me luck. And it did. Torres, I can't. You can, and you will. Because you've saved my life twice now. And because... He paused, emotional. Because my daughter is going to grow up hearing stories about the ghost. About the surgeon who wouldn't let her father die. And I want her to know that the ghost is real. That heroes exist. Sarah clutched the medal, tears streaming down her face. Thank you, she whispered. No, ma'am. Thank you. General Wilson sat in his temporary office at the FBI field office, reviewing the information Blackwell had provided. Names, dates, operations, bank accounts. The conspiracy went higher than Wilson had imagined. 3 senators, 2 generals, half a dozen CIA officials, and dozens of contractors and middlemen, all of them involved in using Taliban drug trafficking to fund black operations, all of them now under investigation. Sarah knocked on the door, entered without waiting for permission. "How bad is it?" she asked. "Bad. This is going to shake the government to its core." "Good?" Wilson looked up. "Good?" "Yes, good. These people destroyed lives, killed soldiers, murdered my team. They deserve to be exposed. Some of them will probably never face trial. Too powerful. Too connected. Then we expose them publicly. Let the court of public opinion decide." Wilson smiled. "You've changed, Sarah. 15 years ago, you would have said, follow the chain of command and trust the system. 15 years ago, I still believed the system worked. Now I know better." "What are you going to do after all this?" Sarah thought about it. "My plan hasn't changed. I'm going to build that training program, teach the next generation of combat surgeons, make sure they're better prepared than I was." "You're not going to disappear again?" "No. I'm done hiding. If they want to come after me, let them. I'm not afraid anymore." Wilson stood, extended his hand. "It's been an honor working with you, Captain Chen." Sarah shook his hand. "The honor was mine, General." Sarah returned to her studio apartment in Pilsen. The same water-stained ceiling, the same clanking radiator, the same crappy life she'd built as a disguise. But it didn't feel like home anymore. Because home wasn't a place. It was an identity. And she'd finally reclaimed hers. She packed her belongings, which fit into 2 suitcases and a backpack. 15 years of hiding, and she had almost nothing to show for it, except her life, and her integrity, and the knowledge that she'd done the right thing, even when it cost her everything. Her phone rang. "Unknown number," she answered cautiously. "Chen? Dr. Chen, this is Captain Rodriguez from Walter Reed." "Captain Rodriguez? I'm calling about the training program. General Wilson said you'd be building a curriculum for combat casualty care. I'd like to help." Thank you. I'd appreciate that." "Dr. Chen, I need to tell you something. I was part of the team that recovered your body in Kandahar. When I realized later that you were alive, that you'd sacrificed your identity to stay safe, I wanted to help. I wanted to tell someone, but I didn't know who to trust." "I understand. I'm sorry I couldn't do more. But I'm here now, and I'll help you build this program. Whatever you need." Sarah felt something break inside her. The last wall, the last defense. "Thank you," she whispered. "That means everything." Sarah Chen stood on the balcony of her apartment, looking out at Chicago's skyline. Tomorrow she'd drive to Washington, D.C., start building her new program, start teaching the next generation. But tonight, she allowed herself to reflect on the friends she'd lost, the years she'd spent hiding, the person she'd been forced to become, and on the person she was reclaiming, Captain Sarah Chen, the ghost, combat surgeon, veteran, hero, survivor. Her hands were shaking. They always would. That was the price of her service, the permanent reminder of what she'd endured. But those shaking hands had saved hundreds of lives, and they would save hundreds more. Sarah Chen wasn't done yet. She was just getting started. Dr. Sarah Chen stood at the front of the auditorium, looking at 42 students, all of them military physicians, all of them eager to learn. "Welcome to Combat Casualty Care, Advanced Techniques for Field Trauma Surgery. I'm Dr. Chen. Some of you know me as the Ghost. Today we're going to talk about why that nickname exists." She clicked a remote. The screen behind her showed a photograph, a soldier on an operating table in a desert tent. Sarah herself was in the photo, younger, bloodier, but with the same focused expression. This was taken in Fallujah in 2003. The patient had sustained multiple gunshot wounds, collapsed lung, severed femoral artery, traumatic brain injury. He was given a 0% chance of survival. She clicked to the next slide. The same soldier, years later, healthy, smiling, standing with his family. "He survived because I refused to accept 0%, because I'd been trained to improvise, to adapt, to use whatever tools were available to keep a patient alive." That's what we're going to learn together. Not textbook medicine, not ideal conditions medicine, real medicine, the kind that saves lives when everything is falling apart around you. The students leaned forward. Sarah smiled. "Let's begin." Dr. Marcus Sterling stood in the trauma bay, supervising a 4th-year medical student. "What do you see?" he asked. "Male patient, approximately 40, respiratory distress, decreased breath sounds on the right. What's your differential?" "Pneumothorax, hemothorax, pulmonary contusion." "Good. What's your next step?" "Chest x-ray to confirm." "No time. He's desaturating. What do you do right now?" The medical student hesitated. I need to stabilize him, but I don't know. Then ask for help, Sterling interrupted gently. There's no shame in not knowing. The shame is in pretending you know when you don't. The student looked relieved. I don't know how to proceed. Can you help me? Yes, and that's the most important thing you'll learn in medicine, knowing when to ask for help. Sterling called for a senior resident. Together they walked the medical student through a chest tube placement. No humiliation, no mockery, just teaching. After the procedure, the medical student said, Dr. Sterling, thank you. You're different than I expected. The other student said you were arrogant? Cruel? Yeah, I was, but I'm trying to do better. It shows. Sterling smiled. He thought about Dr. Chen, about the lesson she'd taught him, about the therapist who'd helped him understand his own insecurities and failures. He was still in therapy, still working on himself, still learning to be better, but he was better. Measurably, provably better. And that mattered. Special Agent Catherine Morgan sat in the conference room, presenting her findings to a panel of senior officials. The investigation into Operation Silent Storm has resulted in the following outcomes: 23 arrests, 47 indictments, recovery of $2.3 billion in illegal proceeds, exposure of a drug trafficking network that operated for over a decade. She clicked to the next slide. Photos of the arrested individuals. 3 U.S. senators have resigned. 2 generals are facing court-martial. Multiple CIA officials have been terminated. Blackstone Security Solutions and Stratton Global have been shut down. This is the largest corruption case in the history of the U.S. intelligence community. And it was made possible by one person, Dr. Sarah Chen. The officials nodded. They'd already awarded Sarah multiple commendations: the FBI Director's Award, the Presidential Medal of Freedom, recognition from the Department of Defense. But Morgan knew the truth. No award could compensate Sarah for what she'd lost. 15 years of her life, her identity, her friends. Is Dr. Chen still at risk? One official asked. No. Everyone connected to the conspiracy has been identified and arrested. There's no one left to target her. Good. She deserves to live in peace. Morgan agreed. She'd visited Sarah at Walter Reed, seen the training program she'd built, seen the lives she was changing. Sarah Chen had moved from saving individual soldiers to saving an entire generation of combat medics and surgeons. That was the best kind of justice. Thomas Blackwell sat in his cell, wearing an orange jumpsuit, staring at the concrete walls. He'd been sentenced to life without parole. Multiple consecutive life sentences, actually. For murder, conspiracy, drug trafficking, kidnapping, and about 40 other charges. He'd cooperated, named names, provided evidence, but it hadn't helped. The judge had shown no mercy. You destroyed lives, the judge had said at sentencing. You murdered soldiers who served their country with honor. You terrorized a decorated combat surgeon for 15 years. You corrupted the institutions meant to protect us. There is no punishment severe enough for what you've done. Now Blackwell sat in prison, knowing he'd die there. He thought about Sarah Chen, the ghost. The woman who'd brought him down. Part of him hated her. Part of him respected her. She'd won, completely and totally. And he'd lost everything. That was justice. Sarah Chen sat in a coffee shop near Northwestern Memorial. She'd come back to Chicago for a lecture she was giving at the hospital. A young woman approached her table. Dr. Chen? Sarah looked up. Yes? I'm Jessica Rodriguez. I was a nurse at Northwestern. I worked with you during the bus crash. I remember. How are you? I'm good. Actually, I'm great. I wanted to tell you something. Jessica sat down. After everything that happened, after watching you save those lives, after seeing how you were treated and how you responded, I decided to go back to school. I'm in nursing graduate school now, nurse practitioner program, specializing in trauma care. Sarah smiled. That's wonderful. You inspired me. You showed me that experience and competence don't always look the way we expect, that the people we dismiss might be exactly the people we need. Thank you for telling me. Jessica stood. No, thank you for everything. After Jessica left, Sarah sat there thinking. She'd rebuilt her life, reclaimed her identity, found her purpose. But more than that, she'd inspired others, changed lives, made a difference. That was worth everything she'd lost. Sarah stood in front of her students for the last lecture of the semester. You've all learned a lot over the past 6 months. Surgical techniques, triage protocols, field medicine. But I want to leave you with something more important. She walked to the front of the room, looked each student in the eye. You're going to face situations where you don't know what to do, where the textbook answer doesn't work, where every option looks impossible. In those moments, remember this. Your job isn't to know everything. Your job is to not give up, to improvise, to adapt, to keep fighting for your patient until there's absolutely nothing left to try. You'll lose patience. Everyone does. You'll make mistakes. Everyone does. But if you never stop trying, if you never stop caring, you'll save more lives than you ever thought possible. She paused. I've lost patience. Good people. Soldiers who deserve to live, and I carry them with me every day. The weight of those losses never goes away. But I also carry the people I saved. The hundreds of soldiers who went home to their families because I refused to let them die. And that weight is different. That weight is a gift. So when you're out there, in the field, in the OR, wherever your career takes you, remember, every patient is someone's child, someone's parent, someone's friend, someone worth fighting for. Don't ever forget that. The student stood, applauded. One student, a young Army captain, approached after class. Dr. Chen, I wanted to tell you something. My brother was in Afghanistan in 2008. He was wounded in an IED attack. A surgeon saved his life. He never learned her name, but he called her the Ghost. Sarah's heart stopped. What's your brother's name? Captain Michael Rodriguez, Sarah remembered. God, she remembered. The IED, the multiple casualties, the young captain with the severed artery and the punctured lung. She'd operated on him in a crater, under fire, with half her equipment destroyed. Your brother, Sarah said, slowly. He had a tattoo on his left forearm. Semper Fi? The captain's eyes widened. Yes. How did you... I'm the Ghost. I saved your brother's life. The captain started crying. He talks about you all the time. Says he owes everything to you. His wife, his kids, his whole life. Where is he now? He's a trauma surgeon at Johns Hopkins. He specializes in combat casualty care because of you. Sarah felt tears on her own face. Tell him I'm proud of him. I will. And Dr. Chen, thank you. Thank you for saving my brother. Thank you for teaching us. Thank you for everything. They dedicated a memorial at Walter Reed, a plaque honoring combat medics and surgeons who'd served in Iraq and Afghanistan. Sarah's name was on it, along with hundreds of others. Some of those names were crossed out, dead, killed in action or by the conspiracy that had targeted Sarah. Sarah stood in front of the memorial, her hand on Lieutenant Rachel Morrison's name, the woman whose body had been buried under Sarah's name, the woman who'd given Sarah 15 years of life. I'm sorry, Sarah whispered. Sorry it took so long to honor you properly. Sorry your family didn't know the truth. But they knew now. Sarah had made sure of it, had worked with the Army to correct the records, to tell Rachel's family what had really happened. Rachel's mother had come to Walter Reed, had met Sarah, had cried and hugged her and thanked her for telling the truth. My daughter was a hero, Rachel's mother had said. And now everyone knows it. Thank you for giving me that. Now Sarah stood at the memorial, surrounded by family members of fallen medics and surgeons, survivors, fellow veterans. General Wilson stood beside her, Colonel Reeves on her other side. You did it, Wilson said. You exposed the conspiracy, saved lives, built a legacy. We did it, Sarah corrected. This wasn't just me. No, Reeves agreed, but you were the one who refused to stay hidden, who risked everything for the truth. That takes courage most people don't have. A young soldier approached. He looked familiar, but Sarah couldn't place him. Dr. Chen? Yes. I'm Corporal Daniel Torres, Sergeant Torres's son. Sarah's breath caught. Torres had a son? When? I was born 6 months ago, the young man, no, the teenager, said. My parents named me after my grandfather, the Marine you saved twice. Sarah remembered now. Torres had mentioned his wife was pregnant. But the timeline... I'm 16, the teenager explained. My grandfather retired from the Marines. He's working as a firefighter now, still saving lives. Because you saved his life first. He held out a photo. Torres, older now, grayer, in a firefighter's uniform, standing with his family. He wanted me to give you this, and to tell you thank you, and again. Sarah took the photo, stared at it. All these people, all these lives, connected to her, saved by her, changed by her. This was why she'd become a surgeon, why she'd joined the military, why she'd survived. For this. Dr. Sarah Chen stood in the operating room at Walter Reed. She was 64 years old now. Her hair was completely gray. Her hands still shook. Her knee still ached. But she was exactly where she was supposed to be. The patient on her table was a Marine, 22 years old, multiple gunshot wounds from a training accident, bleeding out. We're losing him, the resident said, panic in his voice. No, we're not, Sarah said calmly. Clamp here, suction there, I need better visualization. Her hands moved with absolute certainty, no hesitation, no fear. BP is dropping, transfuse, 2 units, now. Heart rate is... I know, I'm working on it. She found the bleeder, clamped it, started repairing the damage. 1 hour later, the Marine was stable, alive, going to survive. Sarah stepped back from the table, her hands shaking now that the adrenaline was fading. The resident stared at her. That was incredible. How did you... Practice, Sarah said. Lots and lots of practice. Will I ever be that good? If you keep working at it, if you never stop learning, if you remember that every patient deserves your absolute best effort. She pulled off her gloves, washed her hands, looked at her reflection in the mirror. An old woman, scarred, tired, trembling hands, but alive, still fighting, still saving lives, still the ghost. She walked out of the OR. Wilson was waiting in the hallway. Another one saved, he observed. Another one saved, Sarah agreed. How many is that now? Sarah thought about it. I stopped counting at 500. 500 lives, that's a hell of a legacy. Sarah smiled. It's not about the numbers, it's about the people. Every single one of them is someone's whole world. They walked down the hallway together, toward the exit, toward whatever came next. What are you going to do now? Wilson asked. Same thing. I've always done. Keep teaching, keep operating, keep fighting. For how long? Until I can't anymore, until my hands shake so badly I can't hold a scalpel, until my knee gives out completely, until I physically can't do it anymore. And then? Then I'll find some other way to help, to serve, to make a difference. They reached the exit, stepped out into the sunshine. You know, Wilson said, I've known a lot of heroes in my career. Soldiers who ran into enemy fire, pilots who flew impossible missions, leaders who made sacrifices most people can't imagine. But you, Sarah Chen, you're the bravest person I've ever met, because you had the courage to disappear, to give up everything, and then the courage to come back, to reclaim your identity, to risk it all for the truth. Sarah looked at him. I'm not brave, I'm just stubborn. There's a difference. Wilson laughed. Maybe, but stubbornness saved a lot of lives. They stood there for a moment. Two veterans, two survivors, two people who'd seen the worst of humanity and still chose to believe in the best. General, Sarah said, can I ask you something? Of course. Do you ever regret it? The service? The sacrifice? The things we had to do? Wilson was quiet for a long time. Then he said, every day and never. Sarah nodded. Yeah, me too. If you enjoyed this story, please like, share, and subscribe for more incredible tales of courage, redemption, and justice. Remember, everyone you meet is fighting a battle you know nothing about. Be kind, be respectful, and never judge a book by its cover. The ghost may be fictional, but the lesson is real. Your worth is not determined by other people's limited vision. You are more than their assumptions. Stay strong, stay humble, stay true to yourself, and never, ever give up. This story was inspired by the real experiences of combat medics and surgeons who served in Iraq and Afghanistan. While Dr. Sarah Chen is fictional, the challenges, discrimination, and heroism depicted in this story reflect the real struggles faced by many veterans transitioning back to civilian life.